Chapter 825. When Xiao Chen saw the final person approaching him, his expression remained as calm as still water. He did not panic at all as he put away the void projection painting and summoned out the lunar shadow saber. Xiao Chen used the strength character formula to drive Soaring Dragon. A vast aura spread out boundlessly from his body. A dragon roar resounded and a strong wind blew. The surging aura was like a snowy mountain collapsing, inspiring fear. The black-clad masked man actually paused for a moment in midair. Hidden dragon in the depths, soaring dragon in the sky. It is fine if it does not move, but when it does, it soars into the clouds and looks down on the mountains and rivers. Xiao Chen gently took a step forward, and a boundless energy burst forth. In that instant, a 1,000-meter-long crack appeared in the ground, splitting the flat ground in half. When Xiao Chen drew his saber, it gave off a resplendent and dazzling light. He soared up like a blue dragon. With 36-fold combat prowess, the roar of this blue dragon could shatter a martial sage's courage. Xiao Chen's momentum was even more unblockable. A horrifying wound appeared on the masked man's chest, and he vomited a large mouthful of blood. His fate was unknown as he flew back 10 kilometers. Although all this took a long time to describe, Xiao Chen had indeed blocked the attacks of the 5 medial-grade martial sages in an instant. He only needed to raise his hand a few times to block these insufferably arrogant 5 people. Xiao Chen forcefully suppressed the aftereffects of using the strength character formula and took out the puppet snake. Then, he picked up the somewhat stunned Ying Qiong and quickly entered the puppet snake. After blocking for a while, there should be enough time for the puppet snake to move. Xiao Chen had beaten back 5 medial-grade martial sages with a wave of his hand as a half-sage. If he told others about this, no one would believe him. However, it had happened right now. The 5 masked black-clad men recovered slightly. Then, they gathered together with furious expressions. Between them was a hole as wide as a water bucket. It was pitch black and bottomless. They exchanged glances and saw helplessness in each other's eyes. With their abilities, they could split mountains and split rocks. They could even overturn rivers and seas in a small area. However, drilling into the ground with the agility of animals was a little too much for them. Of course, cultivators who practiced special cultivation techniques did not exist. There would always be some extraordinary people in the world. However, it was clear that these 5 were not such people. Puppet Snake, this guy actually possesses such an almost extinct artifact. This is going to be difficult. With great difficulty, I managed to drag some of the elders of the clan over, but that girl still managed to escape. The 5 of them were a little flustered. If they allowed Ying Qiong to leave this time, once the matter in the depths of the starry sky was settled, all the elders would return. What awaited them then would not be a good outcome. Whoosh! A gust of wind was heard. The expert who had killed the old lady who served Ying Qiong came to the entrance of the cave. After listening to what had happened, his face slowly turned gloomy. The old man said angrily, "What a descendant of the Qing Emperor! How dare you ruin my plan like this? Third Elder, what should we do? Now that we cannot kill the second young miss, what should we do?" The yellow-robed old man said calmly, "I will think of a way to suppress this matter. Since I made a move, naturally, I am prepared for failure. You all can return first." When the 5 black-robed men saw that the old man was so calm, not flustered at all, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. After respectfully receiving their orders, they turned around and prepared to leave. Pu-si-I. An extremely fast saber light flashed, and 5 heads flew into the air. Their eyes filled with disbelief. Unexpectedly, the yellow-robed old man's plan was to silence them by killing them. Even more unexpectedly, this yellow-robed old man was a Grandmaster-level martial sage. If they had known, they would have kept an eye out and not casually shown their backs to this person. A figure descended. It was the handsome man who had stood beside Ying Qiong during the Sage War. He frowned slightly and looked at the cave under his feet. He said, "Second sister, you are really lucky. You paid such a huge price to lay this trap. Unexpectedly, an unexpected person broke it so easily." The yellow-robed old man sighed softly and said, "First, young master, I will deal with the aftermath. I will not implicate you in this matter." The young man entered deep thought. After a while, he stretched out his right hand, and a small bird appeared in his palm. He raised his hand and let go, and the small bird flew into the cave. That white-robed bladesman should not have any combat prowess for the time being. If my wind-chasing bird can find them, we should still have a chance. The yellow-robed old man's eyes lit up. He said, "In that case, I will go and make preparations now." The young man raised his hand and said, "There's no need. Just focus on dealing with the aftermath. I will deal with the rest. If we make a mistake, we will lose our luck. If we do our best, we will be going against the heavens. I will just send some people over." Outside Qin City, in a forest 1,500 kilometers away, the calm soil suddenly exploded, and a black snake leaped out. The mechanism under the snake's belly opened, and two figures jumped out. Tiny scarlet lines covered Xiao Chen's entire body, appearing and disappearing as if his skin would burst. Xiao Chen did his best to suppress the aftereffects of using the strength character formula and put the puppet snake into the universe ring. Then, he put on his hood again and stared at the cave with a grave expression. Before Ing Qiong's somewhat doubtful gaze, Xiao Chen suddenly made a move after a while. A sharp saber chi shot out from his fingertip. Ka Xie. The wind-chasing bird, which was less than half the size of a palm, was chopped in half by this purple saber chi the moment it emerged. "This is the wind-chasing bird that my big brother, Ing Fan, raised. It really is him," Ing Qiong said with a somewhat gloomy expression. If he had only guessed earlier, now that he saw this unique wind-chasing bird, there was no need for any evidence to prove anything. After waiting for a while and seeing that no wind-chasing bird came out, Xiao Chen relaxed. The skin on his face, which was hidden under his hood, slowly split open and blood flowed out. "Miss Ing, you are already safe. Can we continue with our agreement?" Pain spread through Xiao Chen like needles pricking him. He felt the after-effects that he had been suppressing were like a flood or a ferocious beast, ready to erupt at any moment. Xiao Chen's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. Ing Qiong felt this was strange. However, he did not hesitate this time and handed the 3 brocade boxes to Xiao Chen. When he saw Xiao Chen's right hand stretch out from his sleeve, he was stunned. "Your hand," Xiao Chen's originally smooth skin split open, and blood leaked out. It looked incredibly horrifying. Ing Qiong stretched out his hand and blew out a strong wind. Xiao Chen's hood immediately fell off, and Ing Qiong let out a startled cry. He could not help covering his mouth with his hands, and goosebumps broke out all over his body. Now, Xiao Chen looked very frightening. His face was covered in spiderweb-like lines of blood. That was the blood that leaked out when his skin split open. Xiao Chen put away the brocade boxes and covered himself with his hood again. Then, he tossed the other half of the core painting piece to Ing Qiong. He smiled bitterly and said, "Sorry, I scared you. It's just a superficial wound. I will be fine after some rest." Compared to when he executed the strength character formula in the past, the situation this time was much better. He still remembered the first time he executed the strength character formula in the Sky Dome realm. He had instantly overdrawn all his combat prowess. He could not even stand up. Being able to last for so long this time already far surpassed Xiao Chen's expectations. At this rate, he should be able to execute the strength character formula once after he attained a rank 4 body. A light flashed on his forehead, and a scarlet throne appeared on a scarlet cloud. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and endured the intense pain. Then, he leaped up and finally sat on the throne. A scarlet light flickered, and the massacre throne carried Xiao Chen into the distance. "Hu Qi! A pretty figure holding a wooden umbrella descended from the sky and stood on the speeding scarlet cloud. Xiao Chen glanced at her. For some reason, Ing Qiong followed him again. However, even moving his lips now caused intense pain. Xiao Chen could not be bothered to say anything, so he let her follow him. In any case, if the other party wanted to take advantage of this to take his life, the Haotian Emperor's will clone would turn the other party into dust the moment Xiao Chen truly felt threatened. As the rainbow light flew, the scarlet cloud carried the throne. After flying for 50 kilometers, Xiao Chen landed it at the foot of a stone mountain. That place was filled with all sorts of strange rocks and very few people. It was a very suitable place for recuperating and hiding from pursuers. After landing, Xiao Chen put away the scarlet throne. Then, he spent some time using the universe banners to lay a restriction around this place. Without saying a word, Xiao Chen leaped onto a stone pillar and sat down cross-legged. Then, he started to deal with the repercussions of using the strength character formula without any worries. As Ing Qiong looked at Xiao Chen on the stone pillar, her expression became uncertain, complicated. She did not know how to describe her current emotions. She found Xiao Chen increasingly unfathomable. She could not understand or guess what kind of person he was. He was clearly selfish to the point of being cold. However, in order to make a promise, Xiao Chen risked such severe injuries to ensure her safety. It was just like when Xiao Chen clashed head-on with Yan Shisan in the Star Grave Palace for the sake of the spirit fox race woman. At this moment, Ing Qiong did not know that the most wondrous emotion in the world of mortals was like a soft hook, slowly entering the defenses of her heart. She could no longer pull it out. 3 days. For 3 days, Xiao Chen endured immense pain. By relying on his strong physical body, he mostly recovered from the repercussions of using the strength character formula. The scary red mark on Xiao Chen's face also disappeared. His skin became as smooth as before. A bright light flickered in his eyes, and he gained a deeper understanding of the strength character formula. Xiao Chen stood up and spat out a mouthful of turbid qi. Then, he put away his cloak and stretched his limbs. The slight noise immediately startled Ing Qiong, who was seated on the stone pillar closest to him. She sat there with her eyes closed, feeling somewhat restless. When Ing Qiong opened his eyes and saw that Xiao Chen had recovered his original appearance, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Joy flashed in his eyes. "Young Master Xiao, many thanks for saving me this time," Ing Qiong said with a smile. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and sized up this girl. Then, he revealed a contemplative expression. After a while, he said something that nearly made Ing Qiong vomit blood. "I really could not tell that Miss Ing is not only intelligent and strong, but she is also very broad-minded. This Xiao is truly ashamed of my inferiority." Chapter 8:26. These words matched Xiao Chen's gaze. As long as Ing Qiong was not a fool, she would know what Xiao Chen was hinting at. 2 patches of red immediately appeared on Ing Qiong's jade-like, smooth cheeks, looking incredibly bashful. Ing Qiong felt both angry and anxious. Her usual calm and indifferent attitude was nowhere to be found. What a great Xiao Chen! This mist did not merge the 2 painting pieces back into one and guarded them for 3 days. The moment you open your mouth, you are like a venomous snake. However, Ing Qiong could not think of any words to rebut. She could not admit that she was guarding the painting piece to Xiao Chen's face. Ing Qiong stomped her foot and said angrily, "Tui! Despicable! Xiao Chen, this misjudged you. You are just a selfish, vile person with an even more venomous mouth." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said unconcernedly, "Many thanks for the praise. To be able to receive such praise from the magnanimous Miss Ing, this Xiao feels ashamed of his inferiority." Xiao Chen purposely emphasized the words, magnanimous. Ing Qiong's face turned completely red. She could no longer remain here. She glared at Xiao Chen and ran far away, gritting her teeth in hatred. Ao Jiao, who was in the immortal spirit ring, laughed so hard that she could not close her mouth. She said, "Xiao Chen, When did you become such a venomous snake? You even bully a weak girl like that. Weak girl? Xiao Chen was flabbergasted. Do you think that a girl who can find my weakness perfectly, making me make a promise and end up in such a sorry state, is a weak girl? Since I made my debut, aside from Chu Chaoyun once or twice, she is the only one who can scheme against me. Ao Jiao thought about it carefully and realized that this was indeed the case. Xiao Chen had always been cautious and meticulous. Even when he was in all sorts of dangerous situations, he would always calculate the consequences. Along the way, although every step he took was filled with danger, the number of times he was schemed against could be counted on one hand. Jumping down from the stone pillar, Xiao Chen looked around and said, "Let's not talk about her anymore. I'm going to start preparing to concoct pills. I'm basically satisfied with this trip. I've finally collected all the ingredients for the breakthrough sage pill." Xiao Chen did not tell Ao Jiao everything about Immortal Dao alchemy and the secrets of the Compendium of Cultivation. He only said that he obtained an ancient book when he was young. Ao Jiao also knew that everyone had their own secret. After hearing Xiao Chen's explanation a long time ago, she didn't ask much. With a wave of his hand, Xiao Chen sent out a few streams of energy, forming a circle around the surrounding stones. Then, he used his saber chi to carve out a simple stone table and laid out the materials one by one. With a flip of his hand, the blue dragon medicine cauldron appeared. Xiao Chen placed it on the stone table and looked at the blue dragon medicine cauldron. The image of an old friend immediately appeared in his mind. He wondered how Feng Feishue was doing after they parted that day. There were too many unresolved matters of the past. Perhaps it was time to return to the Sky Dome realm, the place where the story began. These thoughts flashed in Xiao Chen's mind. He did not rush to refine the breakthrough sage pill. Instead, he took out another set of ingredients, intending to refine some ordinary medicinal pills to get a feel for it. On the other side, at the foot of the stone mountain, Ying Qiong also cast aside all distracting thoughts and focused on merging the two painting pieces. The two of them were both working hard to advance to martial sage. Their desire to advance to martial sage was no weaker than the other. After the morning glow scattered, it gathered again. The setting sun turned bright red. The days at the foot of the stone mountain passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Before the stone table, Xiao Chen revealed an excited expression. 2 golden medicinal pills lay quietly in the jade bottle under the mouth of the blue dragon medicine cauldron. The surface of the medicinal pills was golden like paint. A fragrance wafted out, forming a golden cloud above Xiao Chen's head that lingered for a long time. Naturally, the breakthrough sage pill that countless cultivators of the Kunlun realm yearned for but could not obtain was in the jade bottle. Unexpectedly, he succeeded in refining 2 sets of ingredient. Even Xiao Chen himself had not expected this. Normally speaking, the success rate of refining the breakthrough sage pill was only 50%. Hence, Xiao Chen prepared 2 sets of ingredient. However, even so, if one's luck was extremely bad, one might not even be able to refine a single breakthrough sage pill. The principle behind this was easy to explain. For example, if one prepared 10 sets of ingredients, based on the success rate, one would succeed 5 times but also fail 5 times. Extremely bad luck meant that the first 2 pills that one refined happened to be among the 5 that failed. However, Xiao Chen's luck this time was so good that even he did not expect it. He succeeded twice in refining 2 times in a row. Xiao Chen waved his long sleeves and swept away all the remaining ingredients on the stone table. Then, he held a breakthrough sage pill in his palm. His excited emotions slowly calmed down. The breakthrough sage pill greatly increased one's chances of advancing to martial sage. However, it did not mean that one would definitely advance to martial sage. The more crucial the moment, the more one could not be careless. On the stone pillar, Ying Qiong wiped the sweat off her forehead. As she looked at the perfectly merged core painting piece before her, she revealed a gratified expression. She could not help but look up, wanting to see the situation on Xiao Chen's side. When she saw the golden clouds in the sky, she said softly, "Auspicious clouds turning golden. This is a mysterious phenomenon that only appears in legends. It looks like he really succeeded in refining the breakthrough sage pill." However, even with the breakthrough sage pill, there was no guarantee that Xiao Chen would advance to martial sage. Xiao Chen did not know whether he could grasp this opportunity or not. Ying Qiong withdrew her gaze and looked at the core painting piece that was glowing with light. Whether she could advance to martial sage or not would depend on this gamble. Xiao Chen sat cross-legged on the stone table. Without hesitation, he placed the breakthrough sage pill in his mouth and slowly chewed it. The medicinal pill was slightly bitter and definitely not tasty. However, its fragrance filled the mouth and spread out, clearing one's mind. When the medicinal pill was completely chewed, Xiao Chen's throat moved for a while before he swallowed it down. Boom! It was like a flame was burning. Xiao Chen's face immediately flushed red. Then, the redness quickly spread throughout his body. A berserk energy spread throughout his body, advancing rapidly. Xiao Chen calmed himself and slowly gathered the scattered golden energy. With his hard work, this berserk energy slowly cooled down and became controllable. Xiao Chen did not panic in the face of trouble, and did not panic in the face of trouble. At this moment, his good mental state and cultivation were on full display. He also received good returns. The berserk medicinal energy of the breakthrough sage pill gathered into a surging river. Xiao Chen controlled this river to attack the bottleneck of peak half-sage. Invisibly, the door of sages that he had seen many times appeared in front of him. A small crack appeared on the door. A faint radiance came out. The mysterious world behind the crack in the door was currently beckoning to Xiao Chen. Bang! Under Xiao Chen's control, the golden river surged and attacked the bottleneck of half-sage in his body for the first time. The door of sages shook a few times but did not move at all. Xiao Chen felt his internal organs tremble. Blood leaked out of the corner of his lips. There was a price to pay for using a medicinal pill to forcefully break through to sage. The churning of his internal organs and the pain coming from his bones and muscles were the manifestation of this price. At this point, Xiao Chen no longer had a way out. He could only charge forward continuously. If he charged forward, everything would be clear. If he cowered in fear, he would be destined to be mediocre for the rest of his life. He would not be fated with the great Tao. After the repeated attempts, the medicinal energy of the breakthrough sage pill slowly decreased. However, Xiao Chen's obsession did not diminish. His hot-bloodedness did not subside. The thought of giving up never appeared in his heart. There were only a few gambles in life. Some people did not even have the chance to gamble. I, Xiao Chen, am very lucky to obtain the breakthrough sage pill. How can I give up so easily? Boom! After several more attempts, Xiao Chen suddenly felt relaxed. The bottleneck of peak half-sage shattered with a bang. The door of sages in the formless world seemed to be gently pushed by someone. It suddenly opened and a bright light poured out. The blood at the corner of Xiao Chen's lips had not dried yet. However, an indescribable joy appeared on his face. I succeeded. The calm of peak half-sage was broken. The door of sages opened. At this moment, Xiao Chen transcended mortality and became a sage. He advanced to martial sage at the age of 23. A bright light spread out from Xiao Chen's body, and a boundless amount of spiritual energy spread out from his body. Then, it formed a multicolored pillar of light soaring into the sky. A resplendent purple heavenly sage law as thick as a thumb appeared behind Xiao Chen, followed by another. When Xiao Chen advanced to martial sage, all his quintessence would turn into heavenly sage laws. With this, he would be able to use the heavenly sage laws as he pleased. From now on, the only advantage he had over inferior-grade martial sages would no longer exist. The heavenly sage laws appeared continuously. As electric light flickered, they merged. They looked like a river of electricity gushing endlessly. Only after 300 thumb-thick heavenly sage laws appeared did they stop. Xiao Chen suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as deep as autumn water, radiating the light of wisdom and boundless spirituality. A kilometer away, Ying Qiong, who was encased in a 5-colored pillar of light, opened her eyes almost at the same time. Her originally beautiful face now glowed with radiance. She was a beauty that could topple the world, a peerless beauty. Coincidentally, Xiao Chen and Ying Qiong advanced to martial sage one after the other, almost at the same time. However, the changes to Ying Qiong's body were much greater than Xiao Chen's. She was not a cultivator who tempered her body. The instant she advanced to martial sage, her physical body advanced to a rank 1 sage body, undergoing an earth-shattering improvement. Xiao Chen's physical body was already a rank 2 sage body long ago. This advancement only brought his rank 2 sage body to its peak. He did not make any further breakthroughs, so he did not seem to have changed much. On the other hand, Ying Qiong's skin was as soft as water. She looked like a painting, and her beauty was outstanding. Her previous noble aura was even more wholly inviolable. She looked like a flower and the moon, very beautiful. With a flip of his hand, the lunar shadow saber appeared in Xiao Chen's left hand. A fighting spirit blazed in his eyes as he looked at the other party. A mysterious wooden umbrella appeared in Ying Qiong's delicate hand. She grasped it and pointed it at Xiao Chen. A similar fighting spirit blazed in her eyes. The two did not really want to fight to the death. Instead, they wanted to familiarize themselves with this energy after advancing to martial sage. To each of them, both sides were obviously ideal opponents, and there was nothing more suitable than using them to test their current strength. Electric light flashed under Xiao Chen's feet, and he drew the lunar shadow saber. The heavenly sage laws behind him absorbed the spiritual energy that was everywhere. With the help of the purple heavenly sage laws, the spiritual energy turned into lightning-attributed energy without the need to filter it. It flowed around Xiao Chen's body like a great river, gushing endlessly. Chapter 8:27. What a strong force! The speed at which it changes is also unexpectedly fast. Xiao Chen rejoiced in his heart. He waved his hand, and a large purple saber light shot out in all directions like lightning. Dang! The umbrella gently tapped, and Ying Qiong accurately struck the weak spot of this saber strike. The gentle water-attributed energy in his body moved slowly. It was thin and silent, but it flowed endlessly. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, "Good." Then, he quickly spun around and executed the starting stance of the lightning tribulation saber technique. A purple light flashed on Xiao Chen's forehead. The light of his will, combined with the berserk lightning-attributed energy, formed a strong might and pressed down on Ying Qiong. When the saber descended, lightning tore through the clouds in the sky. This saber strike was like a bolt of lightning tearing through the air. It was very powerful. Ying Qiong did not panic. He suddenly opened the umbrella in his hand. Bang! When the entire umbrella opened, it moved all the water-attributed spiritual energy behind him, not leaving a single drop behind. When the umbrella opened, a circular water screen spanning a kilometer formed a huge barrier, firmly enclosing Ying Qiong. If seen from a distance, the circular water screen looked like an incredibly huge umbrella in the air. It opened together with the umbrella in Ying Qiong's hand. When the berserk energy in Xiao Chen's saber strike struck the circular water screen, it immediately scattered and turned into bolts of electricity crackling and flickering. After easily resolving Xiao Chen's saber strike, Ying Qiong smiled faintly. He twisted his right hand, and the umbrella immediately closed up. The umbrella-shaped water screen in the air also closed up, but did not disappear. Ying Qiong pointed with the umbrella, and the closed water screen stabbed at Xiao Chen like a spear. In an instant, Xiao Chen's figure flashed and brushed by Xiao Chen's shoulder. The closed water screen landed on the ground and stabbed deeply into it. The two exchanged moves in midair, familiarizing themselves with their strength after advancing to martial sage. Compared to Xiao Chen, although Ing Qiong looked at ease, he did not have many opportunities to counterattack, doing his best to defend. After exchanging another 100 moves, Xiao Chen executed the Lightning Tribulation Saber technique. The might of the earthly Lightning Tribulation, the heavenly Lightning Tribulation, and the divine Lightning Tribulation had more than doubled. However, the umbrella in Ing Qiong's hand clearly had a great origin. It was a heaven-defying item for defense. It could withstand 3 great lightning tribulations and still remain unscathed. Just as Xiao Chen was about to execute twin dragons playing with pearls, Ing Qiong closed up the umbrella and landed on the stone pillar below. He smiled and said, "That's enough. If we continue, we will end up making a fool of ourselves." Xiao Chen sheathed his saber and stared at the umbrella. He said, "What is the name of this umbrella?" "It is a good umbrella." "What? Are you eyeing my heavenly downpour umbrella? You do not cultivate the gentle water art. Even if I gave it to you, it would be useless." Ing Qiong leaned the umbrella on his right shoulder and smiled gently. Xiao Chen did not know what rank the heavenly downpour umbrella was, but it was at least an inferior grade king grade secret treasure. In the past, Ing Qiong could not bring out much of the might of this secret treasure. Now, it seems like he cannot bring out the full power of this umbrella. Otherwise, it should be able to block 70% of my strength. Xiao Chen quickly analyzed the situation in his heart. The disciples of large clans should have king-grade secret treasures. In the future, when I face the successors of sovereign sects and sovereign noble clans, I will have to be careful. Without replying to Ing Qiong, Xiao Chen stretched out his hand, and the 72 universe flags buried deep in the ground quickly returned to Xiao Chen's hand. Ing Qiong gently jumped down and landed before Xiao Chen. He said, "Hee, let's go." Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. He smiled and said, "I am returning to the Haotian sect. Are you coming with me? Could it be that there is no place for you in the Ing clan?" Ing Qiong felt it was strange. He asked, "Returning to the Haotian sect? You are in such a rush to advance to martial sage. Could it be that it is not for the Sage Mark monument that appears once every 10 years? There is still half a month before it opens, and you are going back just like that?" Sage Mark monument? Ao Jiao, what is that? This was the first time Xiao Chen heard these words. He could not help feeling suspicious, so he asked about Ao Jiao. The Sage Mark monument is about to open? In that case, Xiao Chen, it looks like you will not be able to return for the time being. That Sage Mark monument stands in the Kunlun mountain range. It has existed since the ancient era and appears once every 10 years. As long as one can carve their name on it, they are qualified to enter. There are many treasures in there. Furthermore, even if one fails to obtain it, there will not be any danger to one's life. At most, one will be sent out. Even if one is unlucky, one will be able to obtain a few good sage-grade secret treasures. Only inferior-grade martial sages are allowed to carve their name on it. Of course, whether one can carve their name on it or not is another matter. Speaking of which, this Sage Mark monument has existed for a long time. Being able to carve one's name on it is an honor recognized by the peak cultivators. When Xiao Chen heard Ao Jiao's explanation, he entered deep thought. Originally, he had intended to think of a way to return to the Sky Dome realm after returning to the Haotian sect. He would settle some matters of the past and meet some old friends. After that, he would have nothing to worry about and focus on the martial Dao, breaking through to martial emperor. Unexpectedly, the Sage Mark monument happened to appear. This made Xiao Chen somewhat hesitant. Ao Jiao egged him on, "Go on then." Back then, the Thunder King also carved his name on it. However, it was on the same level as the Qing emperors. Don't you want to try and see how high you can carve your name on it? The demonic geniuses of the various races have been stuck at half-sage for so many years. With the heavenly dew divine spring, they must have already advanced to martial sage. This time, the Sage Mark Monument's appearance will definitely attract all the various races over. The most important thing is that there are spirit veins in there. Look at the lunar cassia tree in the Immortal Spirit Ring. It will take at least 300 years for it to mature. With a few rank 1 spirit veins, it will definitely mature in 3 to 5 years. The last sentence thoroughly moved Xiao Chen. If he fought for spirit veins outside, he would have to face Grandmaster-level martial sages at the very least. There would be no hope at all. If there really were spirit veins in this Sage Mark Monument, as long as he faced martial sages of the same cultivation realm, Xiao Chen would be very confident. When Ing Qiong saw Xiao Chen remain silent, he thought of something and said, "You have only been in the Kunlun realm for 2 years. It is not strange that you have not heard of the Sage Mark Monument." Xiao Chen denied this. "I have heard a little about the Sage Mark Monument. However, aren't you afraid of your clan finding out that you are swaggering around?" Ing Qiong smiled in disappointment and frustration. "The struggle between the large clans is not as straightforward as you imagine. When I meet with that Ing Fan, I might even act even more intimate than before." Xiao Chen frowned slightly. His words actually meant that he wanted to use this as an excuse to take his leave. Given the intelligence of this girl, she should be able to understand that he did not want to get into any unnecessary trouble. "Let's go, then." The Kunlun mountain range runs through the profound domain. It stretches on for who knows how long. Without me leading the way, even if you ask around, you might not be able to find the Sage Mark Monument in half a month. A crafty look flashed in Ing Qiong's eyes as he revealed a faint smile on his face. "Don't ask me. It has been so many years. How could I still remember the way? Furthermore, a regular martial monarch would not know where the Sage Mark Monument is. You will still have to travel with her." Ao Jiao's innocent words from the Immortal Spirit Ring extinguished Xiao Chen's last hope. The Kunlun mountain range stretched from east to west, spanning the entire profound domain. Aside from the main peak that Xiao Chen had been to before, there were countless secondary peaks. Even if one spent 10 years, one would not be able to walk through all the secondary peaks. The Sage Mark Monument was like a drop of water in a lake. It would be hard to follow. Xiao Chen rejoiced. Fortunately, he had Ing Qiong with him on this trip. Otherwise, even if he found out the way, he would have to go around in circles, wasting a lot of time. Amid the boundless mountain range, a towering monument towered into the clouds on an ordinary-looking flat ground at the waist of a mountain. There were several peaks of various heights in the surroundings, all of them at least 5 kilometers tall. Clouds and birds lingered around the peaks. Many cultivators of the various races stopped on the various peaks. When one looked around, they were all martial sages. Some of them were not even inferior-grade martial sages. All of them had long and deep auras. They should be idle older generation martial sages, or the elders of the various sects and clans. Their main purpose here was to see how much the younger generation had grown. To these people, no matter how famous they were, no matter how incredible they were, it was not as realistic as the Sage Mark Monument. Whether one could carve their name on it, how high could one carve it, whether one could surpass the famous experts of history who had been immortalized for hundreds of generations. Only then could one truly prove one's extraordinary talent. Otherwise, one would just be a fake genius. This was because since ancient times, those famous geniuses in history had all carved their names on the Sage Mark Monument. History had proven their glory. Their legendary feats further emphasized the extraordinariness of the Sage Mark Monument, making it even more famous. Even more cultivators gathered at the foot of the Sage Mark Monument. A rough count came to at least 3,000. Without exception, all of them were inferior-grade martial sages. These were all cultivators waiting to carve their names on the Sage Mark Monument. However, with one glance, most of them were middle-aged. There were even quite a few old people. There were very few of the younger generation. However, the older generation experts on the various peaks, and the martial monarchs who came to watch the excitement all focused on the younger generation. The reason was none other than these youths being the main characters of this Sage Mark Monument's opening. The old men and middle-aged martial sages were just supporting characters. Even if these people felt dissatisfied, they could not change this fact. Cultivators who could advance to inferior grade martial sage before the age of 30 were definitely demonic geniuses. They would only appear in large numbers in the age of geniuses. In a normal age, when one appeared, they would immediately become an outstanding talent that would lead an era. These people did not look very old. However, they could easily defeat those of higher cultivation, not to mention ordinary late-stage inferior grade martial sages. Even if a medial grade martial sage came, he would not be able to do anything to these youths in a one-on-one fight. If he was not careful, he might end up capsizing, ruining his reputation. There was a faint golden barrier 100 meters away from the stone tablet, preventing others from approaching. Chapter 8:28. The barrier's thickness and energy weakened at a visible rate. When it completely vanished, it would be time to leave one's name. Xiao Chun and Ying Qiong each wore a cloak, hiding their identities. Then, they blended into the crowd and looked around. Of the younger generation, only 4 people came. Xiao Chun recognized one of them. It looked like Di Wuk Wang Can, and Kong Yuan's group had not arrived yet. That person was Yan Shisan. He wore black and held the heavenly ice sword in his hand. He stood at the side with a grave and stern expression, staring at the Sage Mark Monument. Yan Shisan had been a half-sage for many years. With the heavenly dew divine spring as an opportunity, he advanced to martial sage. This did not exceed Xiao Chen's expectations. After Ying Qiong's introduction, Xiao Chen gained a better understanding of the other 4. They were geniuses of the other races. The factions they belonged to were similar to the sovereign noble clans of the human race. Xiao Chen paid special attention to a man with bare arms. If he did not see wrong, this person walked the path of advancing to martial sage with the physical body alone. Just by relying on his physical body, this person directly advanced to martial sage. After asking Ying Qiong, Xiao Chen learned that this person was called Kuei Do, a member of the corpse race. Kuei Do's ancestor was the famous Iron Hand sovereign of the Profound Domain. He was a legendary character who advanced to sovereign martial emperor by relying on his physical body alone. However, he had already left the Corpse God Palace and led his clan to settle down in the Profound Domain. As for the other 3, they did not leave a deep impression on Xiao Chen. Of course, it was not that they were not powerful. It was just that they did not leave a particularly outstanding impression on Xiao Chen. Without a doubt, anyone who could advance to martial sage before the age of 30 was not a minor character. The Peacock King's descendant, Kong Yuan, is here. Suddenly, Ying Qiong said, the person with him seems to be the Fox King's descendant, Yuan Su. Xiao Chen looked over and saw a handsome man in blue beside Kong Yuan. That man had the unique elegance of a silver moon spirit fox. He was even more handsome than Xian Yu, whom Xiao Chen had met before. However, he had the bloodline of a king. It diluted the feminine aura of the silver moon spirit fox race, making him look even more charming. It's said that he's even stronger than Kong Yuan. When the heavenly dew divine spring opened last time, he happened to be at the crucial moment of breaking through to the 5th tail, so he couldn't make it in time, Ying Qiong whispered to Xiao Chen. Of the 5 major races, the Fiend race had the most people but was indeed the weakest. This was because the Fiend race only had 2 sovereign martial emperors, the Peacock King and the Fox King. When the descendants of the 2 sovereign martial emperors arrived, the Fiend race martial sages present all followed their lead and stood behind them. The Fox King and the Peacock King were highly respected in the demon domain. Naturally, their descendants were widely respected as well. They were the focus of their own race, and had high hopes for the 2 of them. They hoped that the two of them could fight for the demon race's honor and carve their names a little higher. Whoosh! A sinister wind blew overhead, and 8 illusory spirits carrying a white palanquin descended. These were the top figures of the ghost race's younger generation. The ghost race girl named Qing Qing, who had once scared Xiao Chen, walked out. After she came out, 3 more men and women appeared in the palanquin. She must have brought along the demonic geniuses of the ghost race's younger generation. The ghost race had fewer people, but 4 of them came. This proved that they were stronger than the fiend race. The inferior grade martial sages of the ghost race all gathered behind these 4 and started discussing in soft voices. It was fine if they did not come. However, the demonic geniuses of the younger generation did not stop once they arrived. After a while, the youths of the corpse race and the human race arrived almost at the same time. Of the corpse race's side, Xiao Chen only recognized Wang Can, whom he had fought before. He did not recognize the others, only seeing them once in the heavenly dew divine spring. On the human race's side, the ones who came were all familiar. As expected, the son of the 3 holy masters had relied on the opportunity of the heavenly dew divine spring to break through the bottleneck that had plagued him for many years, advancing to martial sage in one go. Aside from these, of the 7 giants, the 3 who had soaked in the heavenly dew divine spring, Bai Wuxue and Juanxi and Shui Lingling, also relied on this opportunity to advance to martial sage. Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief. If not for the breaking sage pill, which allowed him to advance to martial sage in advance, this group of people would have surpassed him. In the end, Xiao Chen had only been a half-sage for less than a year. Compared to Juanxi and the others, who had been stuck there for at least 4 or 5 years, his accumulations were lacking. Xiao Chen could not rely on the heavenly dew divine spring to raise his comprehension ability and break through the bottleneck. Even without the breaking sage pill, he could advance to martial sage in another year, no weaker than these people. However, by then, it would be too late. The Sage Mark Monument would open only 10 years later. Hu Qi. A golden light flashed, and Di Wuk and the white-haired divine daughter arrived, leading the 13 inferior-grade martial sages of the deity race. As the light flickered, it immediately attracted the gazes of all the cultivators on the surrounding peak. The remaining deity race cultivators all revealed fervent expressions. They quickly flew over and gathered behind Di Wuk and the others. Xiao Chen found this strange. The deity race was ridiculously strong. Di Wuk and the white-haired divine daughter had already advanced to martial sage long ago. Now they were peak inferior-grade martial sages. Aside from these 2, the other 13 people who soaked in the heavenly dew divine spring previously had all advanced to martial sage as well. Furthermore, it was obvious that the number of people on their side was greater than that of the warriors from the other races. Strange. Didn't the humans say that a descendant of the Qing Emperor appeared? Why do I not see him? Could it be that he did not advance to martial sage? The golden barrier before the Sage Mark Monument weakened. The demonic geniuses of the various races had already arrived, but Xiao Chen was still nowhere to be seen. Several people started muttering to themselves in doubt. Naturally, Xiao Chen, who was mixed in with the human group, could not hear the discussions on the surrounding peak. He would have to send out his spiritual sense to hear them from such a distance. Xiao Chen wore the cloak mainly to avoid trouble. He did not want the people of the other 3 sovereign noble clans to know of his whereabouts. As for what Ying Qiong was thinking, Xiao Chen did not know. He could not be bothered to think about it either. However, Xiao Chen took note of the discussions of the surrounding martial sages. After a while, he gained a much better understanding of this Sage Mark Monument. As long as a cultivator got within 100 meters of the Sage Mark Monument, they would feel a huge pressure. This pressure came from the mysterious energy within the monument. This pressure was not formless. Not only would it affect the cultivator's mind, but it would also restrict the cultivator's ability to fly. The higher one flew, the greater the pressure. The higher one's name was carved on the monument, the more people would look at the cultivator in a different light. However, it did not mean that one would be able to carve their name on the monument just because they flew high. Carving words on the monument was not a simple matter. In the past sage mark monuments, there had been many ambitious people who wanted to carve their names higher, blindly trying to fly higher. However, these people could not endure the pressure when they were carving their names. Before they could finish writing, they were knocked back, missing out on the opportunity to carve their names. After carving one's name on the monument, it did not mean that it would not disappear forever. If a cultivator did not advance to martial emperor in the future, the name they left on the sage mark monument would vanish after 1,000 years. If one climbed to the peak and became Emperor Wu, the name they carved would turn purple and vanish only after 5,000 years. Only when one became a sovereign martial emperor would their name turn gold. Only then would it last forever, existing with the monument, never to disappear. Under the hood, Xiao Chen looked at the monument, which he could not see clearly due to the barrier. Then, he revealed an interested expression. The monument was only 3 kilometers tall. If not for the fact that it was erected at the waist of the mountain, its height of 3 kilometers would be as ordinary as it could be among the many famous mountains of the Kunlun realm. However, such a monument recorded all the famous experts of the martial epoch in the past 100,000 years. Each monument represented a Kunlun realm. Just at this moment, the barrier vanished, and the 3-kilometer-tall sage mark monument revealed itself. From a few hundred meters away, Xiao Chen could clearly see the names on the monument. The first thing that entered his eyes were the golden names at the top of the monument. These names shone brilliantly under the refraction of the sun. Each name was a legend. When anyone saw the golden names of their race's cultivators, no matter who it was, they would feel yearning, reverence, longing, and pride. At first glance, Xiao Chen was attracted by these golden names. However, when he looked again, he shifted his gaze to the bottom of the monument. Compared to the golden names that everyone paid attention to, the names below did not seem to attract much attention. However, the names were densely packed together, several hundred times more than the golden names. They were like the cornerstone at the bottom of a pyramid. Xiao Chen slowly moved his gaze upwards. The further he looked, the less densely packed the names were. After 1,000 meters, there would be at most 10 names engraved on each row. On the 1-meter-wide stone tablet, the names were very sparse. 1 kilometer was also a dividing point. After 1 kilometer, one could vaguely see some purple names. 2 kilometers was another dividing line. When Xiao Chen looked further up, all the names were purple. Occasionally, he would even find a golden name. Even among the purple names, this golden light was very eye-catching. The moment it appeared, people would immediately notice it, forgetting about their surroundings. As Xiao Chen continued moving his gaze upwards, he fixed it on the 3-kilometer mark. There were only 2 names standing side by side. One was the Thunder King and the other was the Qing Emperor. There were still 300 meters above Xiao Chen, the highest point of the entire monument. However, the 100 meters above the Qing Emperor was empty. There were no names at all. However, after this 100 meters there was a large number of golden and glistening names. The denseness of the rows was flabbergasting. There were more than 20 names in each row, almost as dense as the row at the bottom. If one understood the history of the Kunlun realm's martial epoch, they would not find such a mysterious phenomenon strange. One stone monument was the entire Kunlun realm. This saying was not exaggerated. The densely packed names 100 meters above the Qing Emperor were densely packed. This represented the peak of the ancient era's martial epoch. During that era, martial emperors were as common as the clouds, sages filled the streets, and sovereign martial emperors appeared one after another. Chapter 829. The remaining 100 meters of blank space was the time after the savage desolate war of the emperors. The various races had weakened, their strength plummeting. The peak of the martial Tao was gone forever. This lasted until 10,000 years ago, when the strongest sovereign martial emperor of the ancient era, the Qing Emperor, appeared. Only then did he carve his name at the 3-kilometer mark that had not been carved for tens of thousands of years. Compared to the ancients, there was still a significant gap. Even the Qing Emperor could not touch the many legendary names of that magnificent era. However, the names of the Qing Emperor and the Thunder King still far surpassed the names of the sovereign martial emperors of the past 10,000 years. The area 100 meters below the two names was blank. There were no names at all. Only after 100 meters were some purple and gold names visible. Compared to the Qing Emperor, the Thunder King's gold name was much dimmer. The Qing Emperor's name was as dazzling as the stars. However, the Thunder King's name was just an ordinary gold. After seeing so many names, Xiao Chen guessed that the luster of the name had something to do with the strength of the person. The Thunder King had died mysteriously not long after advancing to sovereign martial emperor. Naturally, his strength could not compare to the Qing Emperor at his peak. Seeing the two names side by side, Xiao Chen could not help but feel even more pity for the Thunder King. If nothing unexpected happened, the Thunder King might really be the second Qing Emperor. The densely packed golden names were about 100 meters long. However, when the Sage Mark Monument reached the highest point, there was not a single name to be seen. Only blurry traces could be seen, but it was unclear who had left those traces and when they had been left behind. Where did these people go and where they were now? This had always been a mystery in the Kunlun realm. Several people guessed that those who could leave marks at the highest point might have become the legendary martial god. However, no one in this world had ever seen a martial god. The legends about martial gods were only recorded in some document. Most of the records were oral accounts that could not be verified. There were no actual examples. The martial god was still an illusory legend to all martial artists. The shock that the Sage Mark Monument brought to everyone lingered for a long time. After reading through this stone monument, it was like experiencing the entire history of the martial epic. Only after a long time did someone come back to his senses. With a light leap, he arrived in front of the stone tablet and was about to carve his name on it. Under the premise of guaranteeing a spot, it was naturally better to carve one's name as high as possible. Everyone would have a trace of vanity and a competitive heart. The number of people eager to give it a try kept increasing. Soon, the boundary of 1,000 meters was broken by someone. Names kept breaking the height of others. However, after half a day, no one had been able to break through the boundary point of 2 kilometers. A few middle-aged cultivators wanted to give it a try. In the end, they failed. They vomited blood and fell to the ground, losing their qualifications to enter the Sage Mark Monument. A figure flashed and landed below the Sage Mark Monument. When the other cultivators, who were preparing to leave their names, saw this person, they immediately stopped what they were doing and focused their gazes on him. The Peacock King's grandson, Kong Yuan, is here. It looks like he will be the first to break the 2-kilometer record today. The names that reached the 2-kilometer mark all became Emperor Wu. This person soaked in the heavenly dew divine spring and will definitely advance to martial emperor within 100 years. It looks like the 2-kilometer mark is not difficult for him. I wonder how far he can go. Back then, the Peacock King seemed to have left his name at the 2,500-meter mark. The higher one flies, the greater the pressure. Every 10 meters from the 2,000-meter mark, the pressure increases exponentially. Furthermore, one still has to leave their name in the air. This is a problem for anyone. It is hard to say how high he can go. As the first younger generation cultivator to step up, Kong Yuan received a lot of attention. Not only did all the cultivators here look over, but the cultivators watching from the surrounding peaks also focused their gazes on him. Hu Qi. Kong Yuan did not hesitate. He pushed off the ground and soared into the air. He did not feel any pressure within 1 kilometer. After 1 kilometer, Kong Yuan's expression turned grave, and his speed slowed significantly. After 1,500 meters, his thick eyebrows were already deeply knitted together. Clearly, the pressure was already significant. However, Kong Yuan was Kong Yuan after all. He did not disappoint the crowd and arrived at the 2,000-meter mark. The many fiend race cultivators all revealed smiles on their faces. However, that Kong Yuan did not show any intention of stopping. He continued to ascend. At this moment, Kong Yuan could see that Kong Yuan's face was practically twisted together as he gritted his teeth. Sweat covered Kong Yuan's forehead. Every 10 meters was exceptionally difficult. The fiend race cultivators could not help but break out in a cold sweat, feeling anxious for him. Kong Yuan arrived at the 2,500-meter mark after much difficulty. Then, he saw a familiar name. That was his grandfather, one of the 2 remaining sovereign martial emperors of the fiend domain. Kong Yuan relaxed his frown and revealed a smile. As he hovered in the air, a short sword appeared in his hand. Then, he carved his name beside the Peacock King's name, stroke by stroke. Stone fragments flew everywhere and light shone. The fiend race cultivators cheered thunderously. When Kong Yuan finished carving the last stroke, a beam of light entered his body and relieved the pressure he endured. As the fiend race cultivators looked at Kong Yuan like he was a hero, he slowly landed. Unexpectedly, the moment he made an appearance, he already tied with the Peacock King. The younger generation is truly unbelievable. As the first of the younger generation to make an appearance, Kong Yuan managed to achieve such a height. Not only did the fiend race cultivators rejoice, but the spectators were also slightly moved. The person who spoke was the physical body cultivator that Xiao Chen had paid special attention to earlier, the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant, Kuei Do. Kong Yuan had just achieved such a height, yet he was looked down on. He felt angry in his heart. He said, "Kuei Do, don't spout such big words. If you have the guts, go and surpass me now." Kuei Do bared his arms, revealing his bulging muscles and perfect curves. As he looked at the names on the Sage Mark monument, he said, "Now is the age of geniuses. If I still use the standards of the older generation to measure myself, I will be underestimating myself." Kong Yuan smiled coldly and said, "What is the point of saying so much? I'll say it again. If you have the guts, go and surpass me now." The Iron Hand Sovereign and the Peacock King were both famous sovereign martial emperors of this generation. They were very strong and could shake up a region. The clash between their descendants immediately attracted the attention of several people. Kuei Do said calmly, "There is no need for you to say that. I am about to give it a try." Kuei Do leaped forward and arrived before the Sage Mark monument. Then, he pushed off the ground and burst into the air. Kuei Do moved like an arrow, relying on the explosive power of his strong physical body. He crossed a height of 1 kilometer in an instant. Only when he reached a height of 2 kilometers did he slow down. A cold smile flashed in Kong Yuan's eyes. The true test was only starting now. The explosive power of a physical body cultivator was very strong. However, this was a battle of endurance. Once one's explosive power ran out, the formless pressure from the Sage Mark monument would instantly knock him back. However, before Kong Yuan's smile could freeze, Kuei Do pushed off the ground and soared up again. With a spurt of energy, he soared 550 meters. Kuei Do reached a height of 50 meters above Kong Yuan. Using his hand as a sword, he quickly finished carving his name. When he finished the final stroke, his figure wavered, and he landed firmly on the ground. When Kong Yuan saw his name on the Sage Mark monument surpassing him by 50 meters, his complexion paled in disbelief. The expressions of the many older generation martial sages and the martial monarchs watching the excitement on the surrounding peaks all changed slightly. The words, "The younger generation will surpass us in time," appeared in their hearts. Following that, the younger generation stepped out one after another. All sorts of height records were broken. From 2,500 meters to 2,900 meters, people continuously carved their names on the Sage Mark Monument. In the previous Sage Mark monuments, those who could carve their names at a height of 2,000 meters would be regarded as absolute geniuses by everyone. However, the current scene truly broadened everyone's horizons. There were quite a few people who didn't reveal their expressions, but when they truly left their names, they were all moving and shocking everyone. Under the hood, Xiao Chen's gaze did not remain idle. He took advantage of this opportunity to pay attention to the hidden experts of the various races. The goal was not to leave their names. After entering the Sage Mark Monument, the various treasures and spirit veins were the true targets. After observing for a while, Xiao Chen discovered some clues. Among the 4 people from the corpse race, there was a man with a mark on his forehead. This person remained silent. However, Wang Can's attitude toward this person was strangely respectful. Occasionally, he would lower his head and say something to this person. The mark on this person's forehead looked like a flower, a very strange flower. Xiao Chen felt that it looked like the legendary departed spirit flower. However, the mark was too small, so he could not be sure. Xiao Chen had long since paid attention to the girl named Qing Qing from the ghost race. Now that he saw the martial sage, Xiao Chen found her even more unfathomable. Although the height at which the fiend race's Kong Yuan left his name had been surpassed repeatedly, Xiao Chen, who had seen Kong Yuan make a move before, did not think that he was much weaker than the others. Back then, Kong Yuan had blocked the combined martial technique of 13 deity race experts with a simple palm strike. That had left a deep impression on Xiao Chen. However, what caught Xiao Chen's attention was the handsome man beside Kong Yuan, the descendant of the Fox King, Yuan Su. The deity race cultivators have arrived. Just at this moment, a soft cry interrupted Xiao Chen's thoughts. Xiao Chen turned his head and saw 13 white-haired deity race cultivators arriving at the Sage Mark Monument together. Hu Qi! Light burst out as the 13 people advanced together. Before the eyes of the many cultivators, they continued to rise. Soon, they surpassed 2,500 meters. Startled cries rang out. All the cultivators present were stunned. Half of the people who could leave their names at 2,500 meters had already become sovereign martial emperors. Could it be that the deity race would give birth to 13 sovereign martial emperors in the future? Stone fragments flew everywhere. However, these 13 people only stopped when they reached 2,900 meters. Then, their fingers released a golden light as they started to write their names. 2,900 meters. After the Thunder King, no one has been able to carve their name here in the past few thousand years. I heard that when these 13 people advanced to martial sage, the supreme deity monarch conferred them the title of Keepers of Light. Keepers is a title second only to the protector elders of the Thousand Deity Church. Clearly, these 13 people are extraordinary. These 13 people are already so incredible. In that case, how high must the divine son Di Wuk and the divine daughter Tianyu Shi reach? Chapter 830. The moment the deity race's 13 people made their move, the atmosphere immediately reached a climax. Cries of shock and discussion rang out endlessly. The surrounding peaks discussed this as well. The expressions of the other races all turned unsightly. After the deity race arrived in the Kunlun realm from the outer realm, they had been harboring the ambition of unifying the Kunlun realm ever since the Emperor War. Now that the deity race was in a flourishing age, the living space of the other races would probably be suppressed again. Whoosh! Perhaps because the deity race was so arrogant, the human race's Yen Shursan, the fiend race's the Fox King's descendant Yuan Su, the ghost empress Shi Sun's disciple Qing Qing, and the mysterious corpse race man with the mark on his forehead all made their move. On the Bushan Palace's side, the strongest of the 3 holy masters' disciples could no longer hold themselves back and took advantage of the situation to make their move. These people practically represented the strongest of the various races. They were all demonic geniuses among demonic geniuses, all of them outstanding talent. They could be said to be shining like the stars, resplendent and resplendent. Every one of their names would become a legend in the future, as dazzling as the stars in the sky. Only this sage mark monument could make them make their move together. The cultivators on the surrounding peaks and the various races all held their breaths, waiting to see if these 7 could turn the tide against the strong deity race. 2,000 meters, 2,500 meters, 2,800 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,950 meters. The 7 did not disappoint the crowd, successfully surpassing the 13 keepers of the deity race. Stone fragments flew everywhere, and sunlight shone on the faces of these 7 talents. The scene froze. It was like they were not carving names but history. 1,000 years later, when all the names turned golden, history would become a legend, a myth passed down by later generations. The 7 landed and returned to the various races' teams. Thunderous cheers resounded. When Diwuk saw this scene, the light in his eyes flickered. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said, "Tianyu Shi, how high do you think I can carve?" The white-haired divine daughter, Tianyu Shi, looked at the nameless mark at the top of the sage mark monument. She did not answer, remaining silent. The 13 keepers at the side answered one after another. The divine son is talented. In the future, he will definitely spread the glory of the deity race throughout the entire Kunlun realm. At the very least, he will be as famous as the Azure Demon. That's right. Back then, the Azure Demon had suppressed our god clan for more than 1,000 years. The divine son will definitely be as famous as him and push the god clan to another peak. Back then, when the deity race was at its peak, the Qing Emperor personally charged into the deity race's heavenly nation and killed a large number of deities. He even killed 4 or 5 deity kings that were as strong as sovereign martial emperors. Alone, Shao Chen knocked down the deity race from its peak. Then, he invented the dragon tone art, allowing the Dragon's Gate to suppress the deity race for several thousand years. He left behind the title of Azure Demon in the God Clan, but there was no need to doubt his strength. Even the God Clan, who were his enemies, had to admit it. It was not an insult to be on the same level as the Azure Demon, but it was a great honor. The 13 guardians all thought so. Diwuk narrowed his eyes and looked at the golden name of the Qing Emperor on the sage mark monument. He said, "It is time for me to continue the legend of the Qing Emperor from 10,000 years ago." A beam of golden light shot out and Diwuk soared up. After the 7 peak experts of the various races achieved impressive results, he finally made his move. The beam of golden light was like a rainbow soaring into the sky. It did not slow down even after flying for 2,000 meters. Only when it reached 2,500 meters did it slow down. The light vanished and Shao Chen's figure appeared. Then, he slowly climbed up before countless nervous gazes. He climbed to 2,800 meters, then to 2,900 meters. Then, he continued rising to 2,950 meters. Shao Chen looked at the names of the various races' cultivators and smiled faintly. Then, he paused for a moment. Just when everyone thought that Shao Chen would not continue, Diwuk's white hair turned golden. Every strand of his golden hair gave off a bright light. He shouted and his figure soared forward. Based on Shao Chen's explosive power, it seemed like he was going to charge past the 3-kilometer mark. However, when he reached the 3-kilometer mark, his figure paused. It was like he felt a huge pressure, nearly knocking him back down. Diwuk stopped thinking about breaking through the 3-kilometer mark. He started to quickly write his name, carving the words, Diwuk beside the Thunder King Sang Mu. Reaching 3,000 meters, being on par with the Qing Emperor. After 5,000 years, someone had finally reached this level. A large group of deity race cultivators shouted excitedly. The nightmarish name of the Azure Demon had finally appeared in the deity race that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The 13 keepers of the deity race each sent out a beam of holy light, forming a 7-colored bridge in the air that extended to Di-Wuk's feet. Di-Wuk stood on the 7-colored bridge and looked down. Finally, his gaze stopped at the human group. He smiled faintly and said, "Sorry, you will not be able to continue the legend of the Qing Emperor. I will have to leave it to Di-Wuk." Di-Wuk's lazy tone coupled with his insufferably arrogant words showed that he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to plant the seed of invincibility in the hearts of the demonic geniuses of the various races. "Ha! Di-Wuk, it is not up to you to say that." Who was it that dared to refute Di-Wuk in front of everyone after he was on par with the Emperor? Everyone curiously searched for the source of the voice. They saw a black-cloaked cultivator walking out from the human group. Naturally, this person was Shao Chun. He had come to the Sage Mark Monument mainly for the treasures in it. At the same time, he wanted to take a look at the true elites of the various races. He did not care much about whose name was carved higher and whose name was carved lower. Many years ago, the Thunder King had carved his name on par with the Qing Emperor's. However, so what? Now it was clear whose name was more dazzling. The height of the name carved on the Sage Mark Monument was more of a symbol. To cultivators, its only practical use was as a ticket to enter the Sage Mark Monument. Even now, when all the geniuses of the various races were chasing after this so-called height, Shao Chen's view did not change. He would not fight for this empty reputation. If he did not fight for this moment, after 10,000 years, whose name was still on the Sage Mark Monument and whose name was more dazzling would be judged by future generations. However, this Di-Wuk should not be like this. How could he continue the legend of the Qing Emperor? There were some things that he needed to say. Under the cloak, no one could see Shao Chen's appearance. Everyone tried to guess this person's identity. Is it your place to interrupt when our divine son is speaking? Di-Wuk had carved his name on par with the Qing Emperor's. Unexpectedly, a random nobody from somewhere mocked him for such a glorious matter. 2 deity race cultivators immediately leaped out and charged at Shao Chen. Of the cultivators who came to leave their names, the weakest was an inferior-grade martial sage. The 2 deity race cultivators who leaped out looked like middle-aged men. Furthermore, they were middle-stage inferior-grade martial sages. They both executed the deity race's mental energy martial techniques and charged at Shao Chen's Sea of Consciousness. In the blink of an eye, the 2 arrived before Shao Chen. Their mental energy origin Qi had already turned into a ferocious beast and entered Shao Chen's Sea of Consciousness to wreak havoc. If Shao Chen could not quickly eliminate the mental energy that the 2 sent in, the 2 charging over would be able to severely injure him with 1 punch each. The physical body and quintessence of the deity race were no weaker than that of regular human cultivators. Mental energy martial techniques were just their innate abilities. Shao Chen smiled coldly. These 2 were trying to turn him into an idiot, crippling him, by entering his Sea of Consciousness so tyrannically. However, was it really that easy to enter Shao Chen's Sea of Consciousness? The 2 ferocious beasts entered Shao Chen's Sea of Consciousness. Before they could do anything, they saw a drifting purple talisman flash with a purple light, and the 2 ferocious beasts were chopped in half. Electric light exploded, and the 2 halves of the ferocious beasts were blasted into nothing without being able to resist. The ferocious beasts, which contained the mental energy of the 2, did not even have a chance to retreat before Shao Chen killed them. When the 2 deity race cultivators got within 1 meter of Shao Chen, they suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood. Their complexions turned incredibly pale. Will of Thunder, hurry up and retreat. He has already erased our mental energy origin source. The 2's eyes filled with horror. They felt so much regret that their intestines turned green. Unexpectedly, Shao Chen had comprehended a will. Furthermore, it was the will of Thunder, which had the greatest destructive power against mental energy. If they had known, they would not have been so bold as to send their mental energy into Shao Chen's Sea of Consciousness to wreak havoc. That would have been no different from suicide. Trying to run now? It is too late. Since the two wanted to kill him, naturally, Shao Chen would not show any mercy. The 3 heavenly sage laws in his body flowed into his palm. Then, he stretched out his hand, and a strong wind sucked the 2 over. The heavenly sage laws flowed through Shao Chen's body as he quickly executed the Kuan Peng divine fist that he inherited from the Kuan Peng king. A huge shadow soared up behind Shao Chen. That was the legendary divine bird, the Kuan Peng. When it spread its wings, it blocked out the radiance of the blazing sun. At this moment, when Shao Chen executed the Kuan Peng with his heavenly sage laws, its might was several times stronger than before. The huge shadow covered the entire mountain. With the sound of wings flapping, a strong gust of wind blew and dust swirled around. Everyone involuntarily closed their eyes, and when they reopened their eyes, they found themselves in a daze. When they opened their eyes again, the Kuan Peng materialized by the heavenly sage laws flew somewhere in the sky. The 2 deity race cultivators preparing to beat up Shao Chen into an idiot immediately turned into a flash of scarlet. He directly turned into a bloody light, his bones shattered, and he died without a complete corpse. Unexpectedly, Shao Chen killed 2 deity race cultivators. The place fell silent. Everyone's expressions turned grave. Shao Chen killed the deity race cultivators in front of Di Wuk. In this era where the deity race was unstoppable, even the older generation cultivators did not dare to do such a thing. Everyone looked at Di Wuk, who was on the 7-colored bridge. Their hearts sank. They were in big trouble. Di Wuk showed an uncertain expression. As he looked at the mysterious cloaked man below, he said coldly, "Aren't you being a little too heavy-handed?" Shao Chen's expression did not change. His eyes rippled like autumn water as he replied calmly, "Being too heavy-handed? If I were not capable, my mind would have been wiped clean. I would probably be an idiot by now." Chapter 831. If you want to be reasonable, I will be reasonable with you. If you want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. Others might be afraid of you, Di Wuk, but I am not. Shao Chen stretched out his hand and gently flung the cloak off his body. His white robes fluttered in the wind as he looked up at Di Wuk, his heart calm and indifferent. "It's the white-robed bladesman, Shao Chen." He advanced to martial sage. When Shao Chen revealed his true appearance, he immediately elicited startled cries from the crowd. The news of the Qing Emperor's descendant appearing had already spread from the Tianwu domain to the entire Kunlun realm. When the Sage Mark monument appeared, many people guessed whether Shao Chen could rush over or not. After all, he had only advanced to half-sage for a short time, even if he was the Qing Emperor's descendant. Not many people thought that Shao Chen could advance to martial sage in such a short time. His appearance today could be considered a huge surprise. No wonder he flew into such a rage. Di Wuk's earlier words really touched his reverse scale. Those 2 deity race cultivators deserved to die. If he offended them now, he would be seeking death. However, it is too irrational to mess with Di Wuk now. Di Wuk advanced to martial sage a year ago. Furthermore, no one has seen him use his full power. Shao Chen just advanced to martial sage. He is probably not a match for Di Wuk. All sorts of discussions rang out endlessly. No one had expected that the matter of leaving one's name, which should have ended here, would take such a turn. When Di Wuk, who was in the air, saw Shao Chen's face, his expression relaxed instead. It was like he had been waiting for him. He smiled and said, "Indeed, it is as I expected. You have indeed advanced to martial sage. Do you dare to leave your name? Let me see the strength of the Qing Emperor's descendant. Let's see who can continue the legend of the Qing Emperor." Shao Chen had always been very calm. Even though Di Wuk kept goading him, he did not get angry. 10,000 years from now, the future generations would judge whose light was more dazzling. The reason why he stood out was to express his attitude and continue the legend of the Qing Emperor. It was indeed not his place to say such words. On the seven-colored arch bridge, Diwook was full of confidence. As long as Xiao Chun dared to compete with him, the contingency plan he left behind could ruin Xiao Chen's reputation, and he wouldn't even be able to carve his name on it in front of the world. At that time, not only would he be able to suppress Xiao Chen's sharpness, but he would also be unable to recover from this setback. The story of the so-called Qing Emperor would end here, and the legend would be continued by him. Now that Xiao Chun had been provoked by his words, the plan was already half complete. The remaining half was waiting for Xiao Chun to take the bait. Diwook, it's really not your turn to continue the legend and glory of my ancestors. No matter how high you carve your name, it will have nothing to do with the Qing Emperor or me. I am not the Qing Emperor. I am Xiao Chun. However, since you want to compete, I will compete with you, Xiao Chun said softly. Then, he leaped up and arrived before the Sage Mark Monument. The bottom 10 meters of the Sage Mark Monument was empty. No one would carve their name here. Even if they could not do so, they would fly 30 or 40 meters before carving their name. However, they did not know that time was merciless. The names carved on the monument would disappear. After they disappeared, someone else would carve their name. After 10,000 years, no matter how high you carve your name, who would remember you without a name? Even if you became a sovereign martial emperor, how many people would seriously look at your dim light before the rows of dazzling golden words? Before everyone's incredulous gazes, Xiao Chun stood before the Sage Mark Monument and carved his name at the bottom of the Sage Mark Monument. Xiao Chun carved every stroke very seriously. He was Xiao Chun, not the Thunder King or the Qing Emperor. You want to fight for this moment, but I will fight with you forever. Let's see whose light will be more dazzling after 10,000 years. Let's see who will remember whose name after 1,000 cycles of reincarnation. One monument, one Kunlun realm. How many sages had there been since ancient times? Who would take the initiative to carve their name at the bottom of the Sage Mark Monument? That was a corner that even cultivators who advanced to martial sage before 100 years old would scoff at. The cultivators present were flabbergasted. The densely packed crowds on the surrounding mountains were also flabbergasted. Some people did not understand. Some people smiled coldly in their hearts, thinking that Xiao Chun knew that he was no match for Xiao Chun and was just putting on a show. Some people entered deep thought, carefully pondering the meaning of Xiao Chun's words. It seemed like they understood something, but at the same time they did not. Among the crowd, the first senior sister, Shui Lingling, smiled faintly. Her soft and pretty face was indescribably beautiful. She said, "Junior brother Xiao Chun looks like you really understand people. As long as one becomes a sovereign martial emperor, one's name will never disappear. The stronger one is, the brighter one's light will shine. It does not matter where it is." Under the black cloak, Ing Qiong was stunned by Xiao Chen's startling actions for a while. Then, he smiled bitterly and said, "This can be considered his style. There is indeed no point in fighting for a moment's glory." The white-haired divine daughter, Tian Yuxi, shifted her gaze away from a blurry spot at the top of the Sage Mark Monument and looked at Xiao Chun, who had left his name below. Then, she revealed a contemplative expression. Naturally, Diwook's expression was the most interesting. As he looked at Xiao Chun, who had left his name below, his expression froze. Why did Xiao Chun leave his name below? In that case, all his preparations would have been for nothing. Originally, as long as Xiao Chun dared to leave his name above, Diwook was confident of immediately using his secret mental energy technique to make Xiao Chun fall from the sky the instant he carved his name. The other deity races might fear the will of thunder, but Xiao Chun did not. The cultivation technique he cultivated was the supreme deity canon of the sect, the most ancient cultivation technique of the deity race. If Xiao Chun carved his name below, naturally, Xiao Chun's preparations would be wasted. Xiao Chen's plan to make Xiao Chen lose his chance to enter the Sage Mark Monument in a sorry state would also be foiled. In Xiao Chen's heart, Xiao Chen had always been a great threat. Right now, even if Xiao Chen advanced to Martial Sage, he still did not feel strong enough. If Xiao Chen really met Xiao Chen, he would be able to defeat Xiao Chen after putting in some effort. What Xiao Chen feared was Xiao Chen's potential and Xiao Chen's growth speed. If Xiao Chen really grew into a second Qing emperor one day, then the deity race's plan to unify the Kunlun realm would have to be shelved. If Xiao Chen's plan succeeded, Xiao Chen would deal a heavy blow to Xiao Chen when he was at his most confident. Xiao Chen would trample on Xiao Chen in front of everyone. This would definitely leave a huge shadow in Xiao Chen's heart. In the future, his cultivation would definitely be hindered. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen's nature made this plan go up in smoke. Xiao Chen did not know how long he would have to wait for a similar plan. Xiao Chen, I really overestimated you. Your courage is only so. I am as famous as your great-grandfather. All the outstanding talents in the world are suppressed by me. You are at the bottom. What qualifications do you have to compete with me? As a grandson, you are looking down on your great-grandfather too much. Di Wuk recovered his wits and smiled faintly. Then, he started mocking Xiao Chen. His words implied that Xiao Chen was a grandson. The expressions of many people changed. They could not tell that this Di Wuk had such a venomous mouth. Just because he was on par with the Qing emperor, he mocked Xiao Chen like that. However, the deity race cultivators laughed loudly and started jeering. Even as a grandson, he has so many titles. What white-robed bladesman? What nonsense descendant of the Qing emperor? He is merely so. Just putting on airs and deliberately mystifying things. If you are truly capable, then surpass our divine son now. Otherwise, you are a grandson. Xiao Chen's lips curled up slightly. He raised his head and looked at Di Wuk. He smiled and said, Di Wuk, I really overestimated you. Even though you are stronger than me now, it is only a matter of time before I surpass you. Xiao Chen gently pushed off the ground and soared into the air like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at a height of 2 kilometers without any pressure. Xiao Chen rose at a startling speed. 2,500 meters, 2,800 meters, 2,900 meters. Before Di Wuk could react, Xiao Chen brushed past him, surpassing the height of 3 kilometers. There were 2 kinds of pressure from the Sage Mark Monument. One was a formless pressure on a cultivator's mental energy, and the other was a visible pressure on the physical body. After observing for a long time, Xiao Chen had figured out the mysteries of the Sage Mark Monument long ago. His mental energy cultivation was second only to Di Wuk, and his physical body was second only to the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant, Kuei Do. However, of all the people present, he was the only one who could merge the two perfectly. Since ancient times, only an inferior-grade martial sage had managed to achieve the same level of mental energy and physical body cultivation as Xiao Chen at the same time. Due to the limitations of his physical body, Di Wuk could not cross the 3-kilometer mark. However, Xiao Chen did not have that many restrictions. Whoosh! Xiao Chen clenched his teeth and charged over the final 300 meters of the Sage Mark Monument. Then, he landed firmly on the top of the Sage Mark Monument. When Xiao Chen looked down, the deity race cultivators who mocked Xiao Chen were all dumbfounded and immediately shut their mouth. Earlier, they called Xiao Chen a grandson because Di Wuk stood taller than Xiao Chen. However, now, Xiao Chen was 300 meters taller than Di Wuk. According to their logic, it was clear who was the grandson here. When the cultivators on the surrounding peaks saw Xiao Chen standing at the top of the Sage Mark Monument, they all went into an uproar. Their eyes filled with disbelief. What the hell is going on? Did the pressure in the Sage Mark Monument lose its effect? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Don't tell me this is real. Xiao Chen is actually standing at the top of the Sage Mark Monument. The martial monarchs and older generation sages on the peaks watching the excitement could no longer sit still. They all flew over, wanting to see what was going on. Diwuk's expression changed unpredictably. Earlier, he had used his height to mock Xiao Chen for being a grandson. Unexpectedly, retribution paid. Xiao Chen immediately stood at the top of the Sage Mark monument, slapping his own face. Now, he did not even have the chance to take back his words. Xiao Chen took out a bottle of wine from the universe ring and sat at the top of the Sage Mark monument. Then, he looked down at Diwuk. Xiao Chen poured himself a cup of wine and smiled faintly. Diwuk, below me are the sages and sages of the ancient era. Your ancestor's grandfather is among them. You want to go even lower? Are you not even qualified to be a grandson? When it came to having a vicious mouth, Xiao Chen would not lose to anyone. Since the other party had spoken, there was no need for Xiao Chen to stand on ceremony. Chapter 832. The matters of the world were always unpredictable. Diwuk, who was feeling very pleased with himself earlier, had mocked Xiao Chen for being a grandson. Xiao Chen was immediately slapped in the face by his own words, not even qualified to be a grandson. The group of people below could not help smiling bitterly. This Diwuk was really unlucky. After today, this matter of him being a grandson would probably spread throughout the entire Kunlun realm. The Divine Son's illustrious reputation was destined to leave a stain that could never be washed away. Diwuk, let me offer you a toast on behalf of your ancestor's grandfather. Xiao Chen gently poured the wine flask downwards. The clear and fragrant wine immediately flowed down in a straight line. Diwuk, who was originally so angry that he could not speak, flew into a complete rage. These words sounded like, "Come, grandson. Let me offer you a toast on behalf of your grandfather." Diwuk's figure flashed as he shouted. His white hair, which had already lost its color, turned golden again as he charged upwards. Xiao Chen's mental energy could withstand this pressure. However, his physical body could not. After barely advancing 10 meters, he felt like his bones were about to fall apart. This was the opportunity that Xiao Chen had been waiting for. His gaze turned cold as he casually tossed aside the wine flask in his hand. Then, he soared into the air and kicked Diwuk's shoulder. This kick made use of the advantage of the Sage Mark Monument's descent. It was extremely fast. Diwuk, who was struggling to climb up, was caught off guard and struck. Bang! Diwuk was ruthlessly kicked down. His body somersaulted several times in the air. He felt like the bones in his shoulder had shattered. After this matter, Xiao Chen would definitely become a thorn in Diwuk's side. The enmity between the two had already been established. Since he could create an opportunity to deal a blow to Diwuk, naturally, Xiao Chen would not miss it. After kicking Diwuk, Xiao Chen's figure flashed. He withstood the pressure and stood at the top of the Sage Mark monument once again. The surrounding group of people were all stunned. Diwuk, who had dominated the younger generation of Kunlun, was actually kicked to the ground by someone. This unimaginable thing actually happened in front of everyone's eyes. Looking at Diwuk, who was in the air, Xiao Chen felt that it was a pity. His kick just now had been very satisfying, but he had not been able to put much force into it. Thus, he had not been able to truly injure Diwuk. Diwuk took a step in the air, and for the first time, an unsuppressible killing intent gushed out from his eyes. A terrifying aura spread out from his body, and everyone below felt a chill down their spines. Sword of initial split moment awareness. With a soft shout, Diwuk suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed a finger. A speck of light emerged from his fingertip, and the world seemed to turn dark. The entire world seemed to only have that speck of light. Suddenly, a strand of sword chi shot out from the tip of his finger. This strand of sword chi pierced through all the darkness in the world. The sword chi pierced through the darkness and light like the first light of the world. In an instant it shot towards Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen felt danger for some reason. He tilted his body slightly, and a weak strand of sword chi brushed past his face, cutting off a few strands of his hair. Although this sword was very mighty and fast, and the state it contained was vast and majestic, when it arrived before Shao Chen, its might was negligible under the pressure of the Sage Mark Monument. Shao Chen's expression turned grave, and the smile on his face slowly disappeared. Then, he looked coldly at the other party. The Kunlun realm was destined to have only one main character. Today, Shao Chen and Di Wuk shed all pretense of cordiality. Shao Chen's opponent was very strong. Even if he used his full power, he might not be able to defeat him. However, there was still a long way to go. The one who laughed last would be the one whose light would never fade. Beams of light started flickering on the Sage Mark Monument. The many cultivators who were watching the excitement all turned grave. This was a sign that the world in the Sage Mark Monument was about to open. Some of the inferior-grade martial sages, who had not imprinted their names, quickly stepped forward and imprinted their names. Di Wuk withdrew the murderous intent in his eyes and glanced at Shao Chen, who was at the top of the Sage Mark Monument. Then, he calmly landed among the deity race cultivators. When a deity race cultivator saw Di Wuk's sullen expression, he stepped forward and tried to curry favor with him. "Divine Son, don't lower yourself to the same level as this fellow. This fellow is just a grandson. How can he compare to you?" Di Wuk's previously calm expression suddenly erupted. He sent this person flying with a palm strike and said, "Scram. Don't mention the word grandson in front of me." When the 13 Keepers of Light saw that person get sent flying, they revealed speechless expressions. This fellow really deserved it. He touched a sore spot. Even a fool could tell that Di Wuk was now allergic to this word. The Sage Mark Monument was about to open. There were secret treasures, cultivation techniques, natural treasures, and all sorts of spirit veins waiting to be excavated by the inferior-grade martial sages. This fortuitous encounter was hard to come by. The cultivators of the various races and the demonic geniuses of the younger generation all raised their heads in anticipation. As Shao Chen sat at the top of the Sage Mark Monument, he saw Di Wuk's actions. Then, he smiled faintly and withdrew his gaze. Shao Chen shifted his gaze to the bottom of the Sage Mark Monument and entered deep thought. According to legend, the people who left these marks mysteriously left this world. Rumor had it that they all reached the martial god realm. According to the time recorded on the Sage Mark Monument, the row of golden names 3,200 meters above the Sage Mark Monument represented the peak of the ancient era. In that case, these marks were even above that. Could it be that the martial epoch had an even more distant era than the ancient era? Shao Chen looked down. At the 3,200 meters above the Sage Mark Monument, he saw similar blurry marks among the rows of golden names. Shao Chen seemed to figure something out in his mind. Then, he used his finger to gently touch the mark at the bottom. Boom! A vast scene immediately appeared before Shao Chen's eyes. A strand of saber light sweeping through the sky quickly chopped down at him. The face of the person who sent out the saber could not be clearly seen. The shout sounded like thunder rumbling in his sea of consciousness. Shao Chen's body trembled, and he quickly moved his finger away. This nearly caused him to fall off the Sage Mark Monument. Even if I am able to fly this high, I'm afraid that it will be difficult for me to leave my name on it. Shao Chen thought to himself, that strand of saber light earlier was not sent out by the person who left the mark. Instead, it was made by the mysterious energy within the monument. Leaving one's name at the highest point was probably not something a martial sage could do. At the very least, no one here could block that formless saber light. Anyone who could leave a mark here was definitely not an inferior-grade martial sage. However, the rules of the Sage Mark Monument clearly limited one to inferior-grade martial sage. Even if Emperor Wu came, he would not be able to get close to the Sage Mark Monument. Could it be that the rules of the Sage Mark Monument were different from the ancient era? The flickering light became increasingly dazzling. The people who left their names on the monument could already feel the energy from the monument gently pulling at them. Just as the monument was about to open, a group of unwelcome guests suddenly flew over from the middle of the mountain. There were 2 men and 1 woman. Based on their auras, they did not belong to any of the 5 races. When someone saw their eyes and recognized their clothes, he was slightly stunned. Then, he said, "The merfolk of the chaotic demonic sea. Why are they here?" The Kunlun realm was very vast. Just the continent alone was hard to traverse. The boundless ocean was even more vast and boundless. Naturally, the Tianwu domain's people were more familiar with the chaotic demonic sea, which bordered the yellow soil demonic garden to the west. The merfolk were the overlords of the chaotic demonic sea. After the chaotic demonic sea, there was an even vaster oceanic world. There were also intelligent races like the merfolk. There were even a few extremely strong races. During the ancient era, it was said that Neptune unified the sea race. All the sea race obeyed the orders of the Neptune Palace. However, the Neptune Palace was destroyed long ago, and the sea race was very rare. The oceanic world of today had changed long ago. 2 males and 1 female. From their appearance, they didn't look much different from humans, except that their eyes were all a beautiful deep blue color. Xiao Chen paid special attention to their feet. It was said that the merfolk were born without feet. They had the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish. Only when their strength reached a certain level could they freely take human form. When the 3 saw the flickering light on the Sage Mark monument, they quickly flew forward to leave their names. They left their names at a height of 2,800 meters. Before Xiao Chen could figure out why these 3 merfolk were here, the Sage Mark monument's suction forcefully pulled the people who had left their names. 10 days later, the cultivators that entered would automatically be sent out, and the Sage Mark monument would close. The next time it would open would be 10 years later. When Xiao Chen opened his eyes, the scene of the Kunlun mountain range had already disappeared. In its place was a somewhat desolate grassland. There was no one else in the surroundings. The thousands of people here were probably sent to different places. Xiao Chen raised his head and looked to the limits of his vision. In the very center of this world, there was a pillar of light connecting the sky and the ground, attracting Xiao Chen's gaze. Ao Jiao, who was in the Immortal Spirit Ring, explained, "That pillar of light is the treasury hall in the Sage Mark monument. However, it will not be easy to walk over." The name Treasury Hall was easy to understand. Xiao Chen asked, "The treasures in there should not be taken away for nothing, right?" "Yes. Not only are there traps and secret tunnels in there, but there are also all sorts of ancient puppets. These puppets are not that easy to deal with. The combat puppets you came across in the Heaven Series training room were replicas of these ancient puppets." Xiao Chen remembered the combat puppets in the Heaven Series training room clearly. Not only did they have combat memories, but they also had considerable intelligence. They could even grasp martial techniques and states. "We'll see later. I need to collect spirit vein origins. There should not be any on this grassland," Xiao Chen said after looking around. Although there were many spirit herbs in the Immortal Spirit Ring, there were only 2 that he cared about: the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit. The lunar cassia tree produced lunar cassia flowers that could heal almost any injury. It was much more convenient than medicinal pills. The dragon mark fruit did not require much. It was a rare natural treasure that could directly strengthen a cultivator's vital qi. By using the spirit vein's origin to nurture it, it could increase its age significantly. If it could reach 1,000 years, even with Xiao Chen's current cultivation, he would gain great benefit. Ao Jiao smiled and said, "That is hard to say. You cannot use the logic of the outside world to judge this small world. The spirit veins in the outside world are all under the mountains. However, the spirit veins here might be under your feet." Chapter 833. Xiao Chun closed his eyes and extended his spiritual sense to its maximum detection range of 10,000 meters. Then, he scanned the area a few times in a circle but did not discover anything. Without a special sealing technique, one should be able to discover a spirit vein's origin easily from a distance. Don't search like that. The spirit vein's origin is hidden in a special layer of stone. No spiritual energy fluctuations will leak out. Departed spirit flowers will grow above the ground where the spirit vein's origin is hidden. If you find the departed spirit flowers, you will most likely find the spirit vein. Ao Jiao explained in detail to Xiao Chen how to find the spirit vein here. Departed spirit flowers contained strong death energy. They were the favorites of the ghost race and corpse race. It was not strange for departed spirit flowers to grow in a place devoid of spiritual energy. Just as Xiao Chen thought this, a purple, red, and blue light suddenly soared up from an extremely distant place in the vast savanna. Auspicious signs descended from the sky. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. This was the sign of a spirit vein. Someone discovered the spirit vein so quickly. A tricolored light signified a rank 3 spirit vein. If a rank 3 spirit vein was suppressed in a mountain range, one could mine it for medial-grade spirit stones. With this spirit vein, one could establish a sect in the Sky Dome realm. Furthermore, it would be a great sect. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Such a mysterious phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of several people. Several figures quickly flew towards the location of the spiritual light. Aside from cultivators, one could also hear horrifying beast roars. The native spirit beasts of the savannah were startled as well. The auras they gave off were all rank 9 spirit beasts that rivaled martial sages. Even Xiao Chun felt some fear from some of these auras. It looked like this desolate savanna was not as peaceful as it appeared on the surface. Electric light burst out from under Xiao Chun's feet. He turned into a beam of purple light and quickly flew over as well. After a few breaths, Xiao Chun arrived at the location of the spiritual light. The place was chaotic, with cultivators of all races present. The ghost race and corpse race cultivators fought over a black flower. The fiend race, human race, and deity race cultivators chased after the spiritual light. Sparkling and translucent light leaked out from the ball of light and scattered in the air. The scene was very beautiful. Needless to say, the black flower was naturally the departed spirit flower. The death energy contained within it could rapidly increase the strength of the cultivators of the two races. The ball of light was a Tier 3 spirit vein origin. The human race cultivated true essence, the demon race cultivated demon essence, and the god race cultivated spiritual energy as well as true essence. No matter what the three races focused on, when they advanced to martial sage, they all cultivated heavenly sage laws. The vast spiritual energy contained in the spirit vein's origin could be converted into the heavenly sage laws they cultivated. Xiao Chun observed for a while. Among the martial practitioners of the three races fighting for the rank 3 spirit vein, there were no monstrous geniuses of the younger generation. Xiao Chun smiled faintly. Now that he had obtained this rank 3 spirit vein's origin, he should not need to spend too much effort on it. If one was not a demonic genius of the younger generation, the other inferior grade martial sages would find it hard to contend against him. Bang! 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 Suddenly, something strange happened. A figure charged over and sent out berserk water tornadoes. The cultivators struck by the water tornadoes all vomited blood and fell to the ground. With a wave of his hand, no one was a match for him. Even the stronger deity race cultivators were no exception. Before they could execute their mental energy martial techniques, the berserk water tornadoes severely injured them and knocked them to the ground. The force contained in the water tornadoes seemed to be able to pierce through space. They gave off a loud, ear-splitting sound. Not bad. A rank 3 spirit vein's origin is considered a rare item in the chaotic demonic sea. The person who arrived laughed loudly and stretched out his hand to grab the rank 3 spirit vein's ball of light. All this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly. When Xiao Chen saw the other party's deep blue eyes, his expression turned grave. Unexpectedly, the person who arrived was one of the 3 merfolk race cultivators. This person looked delicate and pretty. From a glance, he looked to be no older than 25 years old. He was wearing a close-fitting leather armor with patterns that Xiao Chen could not understand. The lines of the patterns had a faint glow, so it should not be some ordinary clothing. This person's strong strength shocked the cultivators of the 3 races. When they landed on the ground and saw the other party holding the spirit vein's origin, they did not dare to do anything. The young merfolk race cultivator carefully put away the spirit vein's origin. Then, he looked at the cultivators below, who did not dare to say anything. He smiled gently and prepared to leave. However, the moment the merfolk race cultivator turned around, he saw a white figure appear at some point, looking at him calmly. The merfolk race cultivator was startled. When did this person appear? Why did I not sense him at all? Hand over the spirit vein's origin, and I will let you go, Xiao Chen said indifferently, directly stating his purpose. The merfolk race cultivator's lips curled up. He smiled and said, I'll give it to you. I, Mu Yun, will not give it to you for free. Stop dreaming. The merfolk race cultivator's temper was rather explosive. Before Xiao Chen could say anything, he sent out a waterspout. The water spun wildly, looking like a pillar of light as it shot towards Xiao Chen. Rumble! The sound of surging water rang out endlessly. The approaching waterspout was incredibly berserk, looking like it could easily pierce through a mountain. The originally gentle water seemed so berserk in this person's hands, even more ferocious than fire or hail. Ka! A saber light flashed and thunder roared in the sky. The berserk waterspout split in half and brushed past Xiao Chen, not injuring him at all. The cold saber light flickered with sparks. Xiao Chen held the lunar shadow saber with one hand and pointed it at the other party. Seeing his opponent break his waterspout with a casual saber strike, a strange look flashed in Mu Yun's eyes. However, he was not frightened. Not bad. You have some strength. However, you are too naive if you want to block my way with this little strength. Falling rain like sabers. Mu Yun shouted and formed hand seals with one hand. Then, he pointed to the sky. Dark clouds churned, and after a while, heavy rain fell. The rainwater formed a line, each line like a saber. High in the sky, a bird attracted by the spiritual light accidentally flew through it. The bird cried out miserably, and thousands of tiny bloody holes appeared all over its body. It died instantly, unable to resist at all. Falling rain like sabers formed a line. The rainwater falling from the sky was even sharper than a saber. Mu Yun's lips curled up in a smile. This falling rain like sabers had killed many martial sages in the chaotic demonic sea. It covered a large area and lasted for a long time. Once one fell into it, they would not be able to escape the fate of being pierced through. A vast sea appeared behind Xiao Chen. 99 pillars of water soared into the sky. A blue dragon leaped out of the sea, and a 3-kilometer-long dragon-shaped saber chi gathered on the saber. Before Mu Yun's smile could freeze, he saw Xiao Chen chopping down with his saber. The dark clouds in the sky were split in half. Sunlight shone down and the torrential rain vanished. With this move forcefully broken, Mu Yun's chi and blood surged, and his heavenly sage laws turned chaotic. He quickly suppressed them. Whoosh! An electric light flashed, and Xiao Chen descended from the sky. He moved as fast as the wind, but his saber was even faster than the wind. Mu Yun's figure wavered, and the afterimage he left behind was chopped in half. He stretched out his hand and a saber appeared in his grasp. Then, he swung his saber horizontally and blocked Xiao Chen's next attack. Sparks flew everywhere as Xiao Chen quickly changed his move. The saber light split into 81 saber images. Each saber image contained his will of thunder. Dang! 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 Mu Yun felt his arm sink slightly as he blocked the 81 saber strike. With every block, he moved back significantly. By the time he blocked the final saber strike, he had already moved back 3 kilometers. Mu Yun could tell that this move was extraordinary. The heavenly sage laws in his body surged, and a vast sea appeared behind him. As the saber flew over his head, it surged forward like a tsunami. Boom! The sea of lightning and the vast tsunami collided with each other, causing violent ripples in the void. Waves of earth-shattering sounds rang out continuously. Blood leaked out of a corner of Mu Yun's lips as he retreated a kilometer. Before he could stabilize himself, he suddenly felt an extremely dangerous killing chi. However, when he looked carefully, he could not find any traces of it. Just as Mu Yun panicked, a pretty figure flashed by him. She moved her 10 fingers, and a gentle screen of water formed in front of her. The instant the screen of water formed, a beam of rainbow light flickered like a meteor and crashed into it. Ripples spread out from the gentle screen of water, slowly dissipating the energy contained in the beam of rainbow light. The ripples moved faster and faster. Finally, there was a loud bang. Unexpectedly, the screen of water could not withstand this energy, and it turned into a spray of water that scattered into the air. However, after blocking for a while, the might of that beam of rainbow light was completely blocked. Xiao Chun did not get greedy. He sheathed his saber and retreated. His movements were very clean and decisive as he watched the newcomer quietly. The newcomer was a girl. She also wore aqua blue leather. Most of her skin was exposed, and she had a pair of pretty sky-blue eyes. When Mu Yun saw the screen of water shatter, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. Unexpectedly, even the princess's azure sky water curtain could not block the earlier saber strike. If the princess had not come, that earlier saber strike would have killed him without a doubt. However, this place was special. Even if he died, his death would only be transmitted out. He would not truly die. Mu Yun, hand over the spirit vein's origin to this young master. I believe this is a misunderstanding, the beautiful merfolk girl said softly. Her voice was like flowing water, very pleasant to the ears. Mu Yun frowned slightly. However, he did not dare to disobey this girl. He took out the spirit vein's origin and tossed it to Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun stretched out his hand to catch it. Then, he casually tossed it into the immortal spirit ring. After glancing at this girl, Xiao Chun did not say anything. He stood on a lightning dragon and vanished into the sky. Seeing Xiao Chun's indifferent attitude, Mu Yun could not help feeling even more upset. He said, "This fellow is too arrogant." He left without saying anything. It's like I snatched his spirit vein's origin. The merfolk girl withdrew her gaze and said softly, "This person is not simple. The Sage Mark Monument is famous in the chaotic demonic sea, even the entire oceanic world. However, this person was at the top of the Sage Mark Monument earlier. In the past 10,000 years, I have never heard of anyone doing this." Feeling dissatisfied, Mu Yun said, "However, no matter what, he is just an inferior grade martial sage. I don't believe that Princess Yao Yen and I are not a match for him even if we work together." Chapter 834. It's just a rank 3 spiritual vein. There's no need to become enemies with this person. Don't forget our purpose for coming here. The crisis of the merfolk tribe rests entirely on the 3 of us. Hearing the woman's words, Mu Yun's expression slowly turned grim. Princess Yao Yen glanced in the direction that Xiao Chun had left and said, "Let's go. Let's find your big brother first, then we'll go to the treasury hall. We must obtain the extreme thunder sword." Hee, what a dense spiritual energy. Now that the lunar cassia tree has matured, we can save 10 years of time. Xiao Chun, keep up the good work and find a few more spirit veins. Just a few supreme-grade spirit veins will do. Inside the immortal spirit ring, Ao Jiao said excitedly as she controlled the formation in the ring to insert the spirit vein. Hearing that it could only save 10 years, Xiao Chen was disappointed. He said, "A rank 3 spirit vein can only save 10 years? The lunar cassia tree takes 500 years to mature. That's a little too many spirit veins." Ao Jiao's lips curled up as she said, "You should be content with what you have. Only your immortal spirit ring is of a higher grade. If it were the immortal spirit ring of another Emperor Wu, the formations in it would not be complete. You would be thankful if you could save 5 years. However, if you can obtain a peak-grade spirit vein, you can save 100 years. If it's a holy-grade spirit vein, you can immediately ripen it. The dragon mark fruit you need the most will immediately reach 1,000 years of age. Peak spirit veins could produce superior-grade spirit stones. Rank 9 sects had a limited number of superior-grade spirit veins, not to mention holy spirit veins. The Supreme Sky sect seemed to have only 2. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, Xiao Chen looked around and continued to search for the spiritual vein. Xiao Chen was clearly not as good at finding the departed flower as the corpse race and the ghost race. Everyone had their own specialties, and there was no way he could compare to the professionals. Hence, Xiao Chen followed a group of ghost race cultivators searching for departed spirit flowers on this savanna. The other party cultivated the power of death, and would not care about the spiritual vein origin. Xiao Chen followed behind and took advantage of the situation. As for the battle between them and the corpse race, he naturally would not interfere. The battle between the two races was an eye-opener for Xiao Chen. One side summoned demonic corpses that were suffused with black smoke, while the other side summoned soldiers that emitted gusts of cold wind. The battle was rather brilliant and the scene was extremely grand. As Xiao Chen followed this group of ghost race cultivators, he gained a lot. The speed at which he found spirit veins excited him. In a short half a day, he had collected another 5 rank 3 spirit veins. When this group of ghost race cultivators met up with another group of people, Xiao Chen sighed when he saw the 8 ghost palanquin floating in the air. He knew that this relaxed and happy situation was about to come to an end. "Young Master Xiao, please wait." The woman walked out from the palanquin and called out to Xiao Chen. The younger generation of the ghost race, led by Qing Qing, had all arrived. Now they were gathering the other ghost race cultivators. Naturally, Xiao Chen would not follow behind and take advantage of the situation. His earlier actions had already incurred the displeasure of the ghost race cultivators. However, they could not do anything to him, so they could only pretend not to see it. When Xiao Chen heard Qing Cheng's voice, he turned around slightly. However, he did not approach blindly. 5 demonic geniuses of the younger generation and more than 100 inferior-grade martial sages of the ghost race. With such a lineup, Xiao Chen would not let himself be in danger. Young Master Xiao is really cautious. Would you mind speaking further? I have something to discuss with you. Qing Qing revealed a faint smile on her snow-white face as she looked at Xiao Chen, who was 2 kilometers away. Xiao Chen thought for a while and looked around. Suddenly, electric light burst out from under his feet, and he instantly closed the distance of 2 kilometers. Green flames burned in the eyes of the ghost race cultivators that Xiao Chen had taken advantage of. They were eager to make a move, and a sinister wind blew. When Xiao Chen saw this, he smiled to himself. It looks like this group of ghost race cultivators really have a problem with me. However, Xiao Chen did not do anything. He only watched them fight with the corpse race and picked up some spirit veins that they did not need. What is it? Actually, Xiao Chen had some guesses in his heart. If that was really the case, he might be able to take advantage of the situation. Qing Qing was rather direct. She said, "If you want to collect spirit veins, we can help you find them. However, you have to agree to help us deal with the corpse race. Help us deal with the corpse race. Otherwise, if you search for it yourself, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to be efficient." The corner of Xiao Chen's lips curled up. He said, "Sorry, these conditions are not enough for me to offend the corpse race. Qing Qing had expected this long ago. She had not thought of using these conditions to move Xiao Chen. She continued, "If we say that we can help you find a peak spirit vein's origin, will you still say sorry?" Peak spirit veins could produce superior grade spirit stones in large quantities. In the Tianwu domain, the accumulations of a sect were measured by the number of peak spirit veins they had. Sects frequently needed superior grade spirit stones to reward their disciples. Without sufficient resources, they could not attract new disciples to join the sect. Peak spirit veins were very valuable and could not be easily measured. To Xiao Chen, if he could find a peak spirit vein, he might be able to accelerate the ripening of the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit. However, when Xiao Chen heard Qing Cheng's words, his first reaction was not to be tempted. Instead, he considered the pros and cons. Spirit veins were useless to corpse race cultivators. However, they were still valuable. They could use them to exchange for other treasures. They would not give them to Xiao Chen for free. If Xiao Chen guessed right, the old enemy of the ghost race, the corpse race, should know where the peak spirit vein was. They might be able to find help. Qing Qing definitely knew that Xiao Chen had the death throne. Working with her would be like asking a tiger for its skin. It was normal for the other party to kill the donkey after it was no longer of use, using him as a hired thug. In the time it took for a spark to fly, Xiao Chen analyzed the situation in his mind several times. After a while, he said decisively, "Very well, I promise you. I hope that you will keep your promise after this matter is over." Joy flashed in the eyes of the 4 men and women behind Qing Qing. A group of more than 100 people started moving quickly on the vast savanna. As they traveled, Qing Qing told Xiao Chen about the details of the situation. The last time the Sage Mark Monument opened, it was also in this savanna. The ghost race and corpse race cultivators discovered 3 departed spirit flowers that bore fruit. The departed spirit fruits borne by departed spirit flowers contained death energy. Needless to say, everyone knew that they were much stronger than departed spirit flowers. Unfortunately, these departed spirit fruits were still 1 breath away from ripening. Furthermore, there was a black flame sovereign snake guarding them, so the 2 races had no choice but to give up. Now that 10 years had passed, those 3 departed spirit fruits were already ripe. Departed spirit flowers could bear departed spirit fruit. Furthermore, there were 3 of them. Without even thinking about it, the spirit vein hidden beneath them was definitely of a very high rank. Our strength is about the same as the corpse races. However, I heard that they are working together with the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant, Kuei Do. At that time, I will have to ask young Master Xiao to take care of Kuei Do, Qing Qing said softly, sounding extremely weak. Kuei Do had advanced to martial sage through the physical body. Xiao Chen estimated that Kuei Do's sage body had already reached rank 3, even stronger than his peak rank 2 sage body. The cultivation of the physical body was extremely arduous. Those who could advance to martial sage through the physical body not only had unparalleled talent, but their extraordinary tenacity was also the most terrifying. The pain of tempering the physical body was something that Xiao Chen experienced much more deeply than others. As Qing Qing spoke, a small team sent out to search for ordinary departed spirit flowers sounded the alarm. They must have discovered something else. The departed spirit fruits were very far away. Naturally, these ghost race cultivators would not give up on the departed spirit flowers along the way. After sending out many small teams to search, Xiao Chen found another 4 rank 3 spirit veins origins along the way. Electric light burst out, and Xiao Chen left the speaking Qing Qing behind. Then, he stood on a lightning dragon and arrived at the location of the incident after a few breaths. Qing Qing could not help but feel speechless. Can you not behave in such an unsightly manner? After all, you are someone who dared to oppose Diwa. Aren't you afraid of being mocked by others for being so anxious? Adding in this spirit vein's origin, this fellow has already collected 10 rank 3 spirit veins by following us. If we convert them into astral coins, that would be a large sum. The one who spoke was Ji Shizhan, a genius of the ghost race who was as famous as Qing Qing. He was very strong. However, Qing Qing's status was much higher than Ji Shizhan's, so he was not as famous as Ji Shizhan. That's right. 10 spirit veins origins are already worth a peak sage grade secret treasure. To think that this fellow can take them with a clear conscience, not feeling any guilt at all. The other ghost race woman, Bai Su, curled her lips and said in an extremely upset manner. Qing Cheng's eyes remained as calm as still water. She said, "There are not many people who can deal with Kuei Do. He is one of them. Let him be for now. We can talk about everything else after we obtain the departed spirit fruit." When Xiao Chun rushed over, the ghost race cultivators had summoned Yin soldiers and were currently fighting with a group of corpse race cultivators. A cold wind howled. The Yin soldiers, which seemed both real and fake, looked extremely frightening. Yin soldiers were undying puppets that the ghost race refined from the souls of the dead using special method. Like the demonic corpses of the corpse race, they were infamous in the Kunlun realm. When the ghost race and corpse race cultivators saw Xiao Chun arrive, their expressions immediately turned unsightly. Xiao Chun smiled faintly and arrived before the departed spirit flower in a flash. Then, he plucked the departed spirit flower and punched the ground. Boom! Xiao Chen's energy spread out, and the spirit veins' origins hidden underground were affected. They struggled free with a bang. A tricolored spiritual light broke through the ground, filling the sky with auspicious signs. Xiao Chen raised his head and looked around. Soon, his gaze fixed on a flickering spirit vein's origin. He stretched out his hand and a suction pulled it over. After tossing it into the universe ring, Xiao Chun stood on a flickering electric light and vanished. The ghost race cultivators did not find this strange. They let go of the corpse race cultivators and continued searching for departed spirit flowers along the way. After returning to the group, Xiao Chun handed the departed spirit flower to Qing Qing. Then, he smiled apologetically and said, Where were we? Please continue." Ji Shizhan and the others could not be bothered to retort. Out of sight, out of mind. They directly soared into the air, leaving only Qing Qing to negotiate with Xiao Chun. "We were talking about having you deal with Kuei Do. At the very least, you have to help us delay him," Qing Qing said patiently. Xiao Chun smiled and said, "That's easy." Before Xiao Chun could finish speaking, the alarm unique to the ghost race rang out in another direction. It was another group that had found another departed spirit flower and clashed with the corpse race. Chapter 835. Electric light flashed, and a gentle breeze blew, picking up the withered leaf. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Chun vanished from Qing Cheng's sight. Qing Qing showed some anger on her face, but she hid it well and continued leading the group forward. By the time the sun set the next day, Xiao Chun had collected 35 rank 3 spirit veins, a horrifying number. Even the Haotian sect could take out only 200 or 300 rank 3 spirit veins, not to mention their 10,000 years of accumulation. The lunar cassia tree that Ao Jiao infused with her full power in the immortal spirit ring had already reached a height of more than 100 meters. Its branches and leaves were lush, and lush greenery filled the air. As for the dragon mark fruits that Xiao Chun valued, they were growing even better. There were now 6 of them, and each of them had a golden bright fruit hanging on them. The effects of the 30-odd high-rank spirit veins had not gone to waste. Ao Jiao giggled and said, "Do your best. Do your best. These ghost race cultivators are really good people. A team of more than 100 people helping you search for spirit veins for free. This is a rare opportunity." An irritable aura spread through the ghost race group. Qing Qing wondered if she had found the wrong person. They watched as their group fought to the death with the corpse race. Yet, this fellow managed to obtain the spirit veins' origin so easily. Sometimes, when Xiao Chun was lucky, he could pick a departed spirit flower. However, if the corpse race managed to obtain the departed spirit flower first, He would not waste his energy to help them snatch it. Qing Cheng wanted Xiao Chen to help, but when she looked back, she discovered that he had already disappeared. She could not do anything about it. In the following 2 days, not only the ghost race but also the corpse race raised their guard against Xiao Chen. When the two sides saw him appear, they tacitly stopped fighting at the same time and started fighting for the departed spirit flowers and spirit veins' origins. Furthermore, most of the spirit veins in the savannah had already been searched. Xiao Chen's harvest decreased sharply. After 2 days, he managed to obtain 5 spirit veins' origins. However, 40 spirit veins' origins were sufficient. Within 4 days, the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit in the immortal spirit ring reached 400 years of age. Xiao Chen estimated that the moon cassia tree would be completely mature in 2 days. At that time, he could either keep it for himself or sell it for star coins. Of course, the prerequisite for all of this was that they would be able to obtain that supreme grade spirit vein. Otherwise, they would have to wait another 100 years. Or he could spend a large amount of money to buy a rank 3 spirit vein from the black market. That would not be worth it. The advancing team suddenly stopped. Xiao Chen also frowned slightly. Just a moment ago, the death qi that filled the void suddenly increased by a lot. Life and death, the withering of flowers and grass, the extinction of birds and beasts, or the death of cultivators, the death qi of the world always existed. However, it was difficult for ordinary cultivators to sense it. If they accidentally sensed it, they would avoid it. No one liked death qi. Xiao Chen was no exception. However, the group of ghost race cultivators behind all looked radiant. Their eyes gleamed with vigor, clearly enjoying themselves. Xiao Chen focused on the vast savannah at the limits of his vision. He could see 2 strands of black smoke soaring into the sky, forming a black cloud in the clear sky. Unexpectedly, the formless death qi was visible to the naked eye. Needless to say, the departed spirit fruit was below the black cloud. In another direction, the many corpse race cultivators all stopped as well. As they looked at the black cloud, greed appeared in their eyes. 5 men stood at the front of the group. The one in the middle was the mysterious man with the departed spirit mark on his forehead that Xiao Chen had paid special attention to. Beside him was Wang Can, who had fought with Xiao Chen before. The other 3 were the outstanding talents of the corpse race's younger generation. Brother Wei Hua, that place is where the departed spirit fruit is. However, there are only 2 strands of death qi. The black flame sovereign snake guarding this place should have eaten one, Wang Can said politely as he pointed to the front. Wei Hua nodded and said in a somewhat hoarse voice, "I can feel it. I only need 1 departed spirit fruit. That will be sufficient for me to advance to late-stage, inferior-grade martial sage." The ghost race people, a murderous intent flashed in Wei Hua's eyes. He said, "There's no need to worry. This time, I brought 3 underworld fire demonic corpses. Each of them can hold their own against a medial-grade martial sage. There is no need to fear even if we run into Diwa." Bang! Intense explosions resounded in the air. Wang Can looked up and saw a figure moving quickly in the air. Xiao Chen could not feel any fluctuations of death energy or heavenly sage laws. When that person stomped on the air, there was an intense explosion that sounded like thunder. Relying entirely on the control of his physical body, he stepped on the void and arrived at an extraordinary speed. Wang Can's face lit up in joy. He smiled and said, "Kuei Do is here. Now we are even more confident." Wei Hua raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "The physical body of the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant is indeed as strong as before." However, Wei Hua's tone did not sound friendly. Wang Can knew the secret behind this. Wei Hua's great-grandfather was a true major character of the Corpse God Palace, one of the 4 sovereign martial emperors, the Underworld Fire Sovereign. Back then, when the Iron Hand Sovereign betrayed the Corpse God Palace, he fought with Wei Hua's great-grandfather. In the end, the Underworld Fire Sovereign lost, allowing the Iron Hand Sovereign to flee. The old grudges of adulthood had long since faded away with the passage of time. There was no eternal hatred between sovereign martial emperors. However, when two descendants met, a small grudge would definitely exist. Whoosh! The Iron Hand sovereign's figure flashed, and he landed in front of Wei Hua. He smiled and said, "The two of you have been waiting for a long time. I ran into Yan Shi-san along the way and spent some effort to shake him off." Wei Hua smiled gently and said, "Yan Shi-san's killing sword Dao extinguishes all life force, killing everything in the world. You focus on cultivating the physical body. It is normal that you cannot defeat him." The Iron Hand sovereign's expression changed as he stared at Wei Hua. Then, he smiled and said, "I was wondering who it was. So, it is the Underworld Fire Sovereign's descendant. The scar on your great-grandfather's chest should still be there, right?" The full power strike of a rank 7 sage body left a mark that will not fade even after 10,000 years. The two started mocking each other the moment they met. Wang Can quickly stepped forward and laughed loudly. "Brother Kuei-do, let's go quickly. After this matter is over, I guarantee that I will give you my heavenly demon body cultivation art." Kuei-do snorted coldly and did not say anything more. Wei Hua also knew when to advance and when to retreat. This was not the time to seek trouble for the other party, so he did not continue mocking the other party. The two groups headed for the place where the black smoke rose, flying quickly over the savannah. 4 hours later, the two groups arrived almost at the same time. However, they did not start fighting immediately. Instead, they showed grave expressions. When the two groups arrived below the black clouds, they did not see the departed spirit flower. There was only a black snake coiled around its body, looking like a small hill. A faint flame burned on its black scales. A pair of small horns protruded from its head, and it flicked its scarlet tongue as it looked around. This was the Black Flame Sovereign Snake. However, its size surpassed everyone's expectations. There was also the small horn on its head. All of these indicated that the Black Flame Sovereign Snake's strength had improved in the past 10 years. Qing Qing stared at the Black Flame Sovereign Snake and said, "This is problematic. It swallowed a departed spirit fruit. It is probably as strong as a superior-grade martial sage now." Wang Can and the others frowned heavily as well. They did not know what to do. Earlier, they had not treated the Black Flame Sovereign Snake as much trouble. As the two groups soared into the air, they could see the anxiety in each other's eyes. This was not the result that Xiao Chen wanted. Xiao Chen entered deep thought. After a while, he said, "The departed spirit fruit should be under it. I'll lure it away." Ji Shizhan, Bai Su, and the others looked at Xiao Chen in shock. It was not that they did not believe in Xiao Chen's strength. However, it was rare for Xiao Chen to take the initiative to help. "Don't worry. I'm still confident in my speed. After I return, I will help you delay Kuei-do." Xiao Chen continued, dispelling the doubts in Qing Cheng's heart. She nodded and said, "Dragging things out like this is not a solution. In that case, I'll have to trouble young Master Xiao. However, are you confident of escaping?" The interests of the two groups were now tied together. If they lost, it would be impossible for Xiao Chen to obtain the peak spirit vein. "I never do things that I am not confident of." Xiao Chen pushed off the air and his figure flickered. Then, a bow appeared in his hand. Xiao Chen drew the bowstring, and an arrow fell like a meteor, tearing space apart. With a ka-ci sound, the arrow accurately struck the gap between the Black Flame Sovereign Snake's scales and entered its body. Just one arrow was already so powerful. Qing Qing, Wang Can, and the others were all astonished. Since when did the Black Flame Sovereign Snake's defense become like tofu? There is a secret to this bow. The few of them stared at the Soul Slayer bow in Xiao Chen's hand. Their eyes revealed an extremely interested expression. This was especially so for Kuei-do. He watched very carefully. When Xiao Chen drew the bowstring, he used pure vital qi. Blood flowed out and the Black Flame Sovereign Snake howled in pain. Then, it opened its mouth and spat out a stream of flames at Xiao Chen. The dense black flames were like dense clouds. Everywhere it passed, it burned up the air and dust, leaving behind large patches of pitch-black space. Xiao Chen nimbly dodged. Then, he drew the bowstring again and fired another arrow. The black flame sovereign snake was thoroughly enraged. Its huge body soared into the air and shot towards Xiao Chen. When the black flame sovereign snake's body left the ground, 3 departed spirit flowers appeared before the 2 teams. 2 of the flowers contained a black fruit. Attack! The 2 teams withdrew their attention from the Soul Slayer bow in Xiao Chen's hand. They did not waste any words and immediately started fighting. Along the way, the teams that the 2 sides sent out to search for departed spirit flowers had fought several times. Both sides had been preparing for this fierce battle for a long time. Far away, Xiao Chen, who was dodging the black flame sovereign snake's attacks, revealed a faint smile. This was the situation that he wanted to see. The black flames surged endlessly. Occasionally, large patches of pitch-black space appeared in the sky. Xiao Chen frowned, not daring to dodge. The might of these flames was ferocious. Furthermore, they contained a deathly energy that could burn away life force. Suddenly, there was the sound of a swift wind. The wind was like a saber, piercing through the surface of Xiao Chen's protective quintessence and causing his face to hurt. Chapter 836. Xiao Chen pushed off with his feet and spun around as he soared into the air. The moment he rose, a black snake tail swept under his feet. If he had been any slower, he would have suffered this strike. The snake tail sweep was the strongest move of snake-type spirit beasts. This sweep of the black flame sovereign snake, which was as strong as a superior-grade martial sage, was sufficient to severely injure Xiao Chen. The howling of a strong wind resounded in the sky. It sounded like a hurried whistle, spreading in all directions and scattering the white clouds. With one sweep, there were no clouds for 5 kilometers around. Xiao Chen was flabbergasted. No wonder the expressions of the people on both sides immediately changed when they saw the gigantified black flame sovereign snake. With such explosive power, it would be terrible if one got hit. A strong fishy smell wafted over. Xiao Chen looked up and saw the black flame sovereign snake twisting its body in the air like a flood dragon. Then, it opened its huge mouth and launched itself at him. A huge suction force came from its mouth, and a whirlwind continued to form, spinning continuously. Fortunately, Xiao Chen dodged quickly and was not pulled by the suction. He tilted his body down and glided down like an eagle. Then, he turned his head back and fired another arrow. The black flame sovereign snake's mind was filled with rage. It roared and spat out a 3,000-meter-long black flame from its mouth. The snake's head danced. The pillar of flames danced in the air, looking very mighty. As Xiao Chen glided down, he moved about nimbly, dodging the flames, not letting any sparks come into contact with him. As the chase continued, the spirit beasts and cultivators of the savannah panicked and fled for their lives. The difference between a superior-grade martial sage and an inferior-grade martial sage was an insurmountable chasm. Xiao Chen was not arrogant enough to kill the other party. However, he was very confident of luring this black flame sovereign snake away. Xiao Chen looked up into the distance and saw a pillar of light descending from the sky. That was the target of everyone here, the treasury hall. After dodging a few times, Xiao Chen slid swiftly towards the ground. When he was close to the ground, he lifted his body slightly and landed firmly on the ground. Xiao Chen took a few steps forward, alleviating the momentum from inertia. He stopped dodging and raised his head to look at the black flame sovereign snake in the air. When the black flame sovereign snake saw that Xiao Chen was no longer running for his life, it charged down violently, its huge body directly descending. 9 roaming dragon transformations! A loud rumbling sound rang out as the black flame sovereign snake landed on the ground. The entire ground shook violently and cracks even appeared. The black flames on his body ignited the surrounding weed. As the flames swept out, a large patch of ash was created. 9 figures surrounded the black flame snake and soared into the air. The real and the fake were hard to distinguish. The black flame snake spat out flames and destroyed the clones one by one. By the time the black flame sovereign snake destroyed the 8 clones, it had already given Xiao Chen too much time. Xiao Chen's true body was already a kilometer away. Xiao Chen formed hand seals, and the 72 universe flags flickered with spiritual light. They quickly entered the ground and formed a strong restriction that spanned 5 kilometers. The restriction covered all directions, including the sky and the ground. Once the black flame sovereign snake was trapped, it would not be able to escape. However, to others, they would not be able to discover anything. Furthermore, the restriction had a simple illusion effect. Xiao Chen's white robes fluttered in the sharp air as he looked at the restriction below. He smiled faintly and heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he dusted off his hands and carefully flew back. 5 kilometers away, Xiao Chen stopped in the air. He supported his chin with his right hand as he watched carefully. While avoiding the 2 departed spirit fruits, the ghost race and corpse race fought each other to the death. The battle was very intense. All sorts of soldiers and demonic corpses fought. A cold wind blew and black chi spread out. As dust flew up, the sounds of fighting rang out endlessly. The scene was chaotic. On the battlefield, 3 demonic corpses covered in green demonic flames attracted Xiao Chen's attention. These 3 demonic corpses were clearly different from the other demonic corpses. First, they were about 3 meters tall, far taller than the other demonic corpses. Then, there was the green demonic flame on their bodies. Xiao Chen thought about it. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like the legendary Yellow Springs underworld flame. Among the inattributed flames, the Yellow Springs underworld flame was second only to the lunar true flame. It was on the same level as the scarlet blood frost flame. Like the scarlet blood frost flame, it was also a top-grade evil flame. Its special effect was to burn the soul, which was a strong counter to soldiers. However, these 3 demonic corpses, which should have been the nemesis of soldiers, met with a difficult opponent. That white figure held a long scythe in its hand. It was about 10 meters tall, much taller than the flaming demonic corpses. The white figure fought 1 against 3. Although it was clearly not a match for them, it managed to delay the 3 demonic corpses, preventing them from sweeping up the soldiers elsewhere. Ao Jiao, who was in the Immortal Spirit Ring, clicked her tongue and sighed. The fight is really intense. Unexpectedly, the Corpse Race's Underworld Fire Demonic Corpse and the Ghost Race's Soul Reaper Soldier are both brought over. Underworld Fire Demonic Corpse and Soul Reaper Soldier. Xiao Chen did not understand the martial techniques of these 2 races. However, he could tell from their auras that they were not easy to deal with. This strengthened some of Xiao Chen's thoughts. He continued to watch. Qing Cheng and the others all had their own opponents and could not get away. The battlefield entered a stalemate. Both sides originally thought that they could end the fight quickly. They had not expected it to be so difficult. If one observed the situation carefully, one would discover that the corpse race held the advantage. This was because the other side had an extra person, Kuei Do. Kuei Do's current opponent was a black figure holding a scythe as well. According to Ao Jiao, this was also a refined soldier called Soul Reaper Soldier. The black-robed Soul Reaper was at a complete disadvantage against Kuei Do. The energy that Kuei Do's physical body burst out with contained an aura of extreme yang, which dealt significant damage to soldiers. Kuei Do's punches landed on the black figure, giving off loud bangs. The black figure was forced back, and the light on its body slowly dimmed. As long as this black-robed Soul Reaper was defeated, Kuei Do would be free to deal with the white-robed Soul Reaper. After that, Kuei Do would not need to make a move. The 3 underworld fire demonic corpses would be able to sweep through the place. With just a slight change in the balance, the other side would immediately crumble. Qing Cheng, who was currently fighting with Wei Hua, had an anxious expression. Occasionally, she glanced in the direction that Xiao Chen had taken, anticipating his arrival. Yellow sand filled the air, and thick smoke churned. When Xiao Chen saw both sides fighting at full power, he sighed in his heart. This was the other side's true strength. With such a large team, no matter which side Xiao Chen faced, he would not be a match for them. If he worked with them individually, he would not be on equal footing from the start. After that, if the other side wanted to bite back, there would be no room for negotiation. Xiao Chen had never liked this kind of cooperation. He also did not believe that there would be fairness in a situation where one's strength was not equal. The initiative still needed to be in his hands. Even if it was a little risky, it was worth it. Xiao Chen took a deep look at the place where the departed spirit fruit was. Then, his figure flashed, and he landed on the ground. Xiao Chen took out the puppet snake and entered its belly. Then, he controlled the puppet snake to go deep underground, arriving right below the departed spirit flower without anyone noticing. Normally, a spirit vein's origin wrapped in a special stone membrane would be right below the departed spirit flower. Xiao Chen sent out his spiritual sense and searched carefully. He did not spend much time before he found the spirit vein's origin wrapped up. The puppet snake opened its mouth and bit down on the spirit vein's origin. Then, it rolled into Xiao Chen's hand, easily obtaining the spirit vein's origin. The group of people above fought to the death. Even in their dreams, they would not expect that Xiao Chen, who lured away the black flame sovereign snake, had already returned. Furthermore, he managed to obtain the peak spirit vein's origin without much effort. Xiao Chen had never believed that Qing Qing would let him leave after obtaining the spirit vein's origin. It was not just because of the spirit vein's origin. The death throne that Xiao Chen possessed was sufficient for Qing Qing to make a move without any reason. A light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. He was not in a rush to leave. Instead, he controlled the puppet snake to rise in a straight line. Up, 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 up. Bang! The three departed spirit flowers on the ground suddenly burst apart. Countless bits of soil flew everywhere as the three departed spirit flowers flew into the air. The black puppet snake opened its mouth and bit down. Then, it swallowed the three departed spirit flowers at a speed that no one could stop. This mysterious phenomenon startled the ghost race and corpse race cultivators at the critical moment of the chaotic battle. They could not help but stop what they were doing. Damn! In the next moment, the cultivators of the two races reacted and started cursing angrily. Death energy gathered in their bodies, and a strong wind blew. All sorts of horrifying martial techniques rained down on the puppet snake. Do you still want the departed spirit fruits? If you want it, then stop. Xiao Chen used the dragon tone art to transmit his voice from the puppet snake. This simple sentence immediately froze everyone's movement. Before everyone's astonished gazes, Xiao Chen walked out of the puppet snake's mouth holding three departed spirit flowers. As Xiao Chen looked at the stunned crowd, he smiled gently. The show was just beginning. Of the three departed spirit flowers, Xiao Chen picked two of the departed spirit fruits and played with them in his hand. Formless death qi spread out. Xiao Chen frowned slightly, feeling somewhat uncomfortable. The main reason was because of his mental state. With his protective quintessence, this death qi could not cause any substantial harm to Xiao Chen. When Qing Qing, Ji Shizhan, Bai Su, and the others saw Xiao Chen suddenly return, they rejoiced at first. Then, their expressions changed. Something was wrong. The expressions of Wang Can, Wei Hua, and the others of the corpse race became uncertain as well. They did not know what Xiao Chen was trying to do. Xiao Chen, what are you trying to do? The departed spirit fruits are useless to you, right? Do you think you can run after offending both the ghost race and the corpse race for these two departed spirit fruits? Wang Can asked coldly with a sullen expression. Standing above the puppet snake, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Ha ha. It does not matter whether it is useful to me or not. It is fine as long as it is useful to you." The ghost race woman, Qing Qing, also showed some anger on her snow-white, soul-stirring face. She had not expected Xiao Chen to be so bold. Not only did Xiao Chen obtain the peak spirit vein's origin, but he even snatched away the departed spirit fruits before the many experts of the corpse race, ghost race, and ghost race. Chapter 837. She should have known that this fellow would not be so kind as to lure away the black flame sovereign snake. He clearly wanted the two races to fight while he took advantage of the situation. Or rather, from the very start, Xiao Chen did not believe in Qing Cheng's promise and had made up his mind long ago. Qing Cheng said in a cold voice, "Young Master Xiao, unexpectedly, you are also someone who goes back on your word." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said to Qing Cheng, "Miss Qing Cheng, you know very well who you are keeping these black and white soul reapers to deal with. A straightforward person does not resort to insinuations. There is no need to be so pompous. I, Xiao Chen, have never said that I am a gentleman. If I really help you deal with these people, will you let me go? I am not a 3-year-old child. Whether it is right or wrong, there is no need to say too much. Right now, I am in control of everything. Whether you admit it or not, the departed spirit fruit that can help you advance quickly is now in the hands of me, Xiao Chen." There were more than 100 martial sages of the two races and countless demonic corpses and Yin soldiers. If they all attacked together, even a superior-grade martial sage would not dare to be too unbridled. A gentle wind blew, and Xiao Chen's white robes and hair fluttered. As he stood on the puppet snake's head, he looked at the group of experts without any fear. His expression did not change at all. Why is he speaking so much nonsense? Attack together and take his life. Does he really think that he is incredible just because he is a descendant of the Qing Emperor? Someone roared in rage. The rest of the people chimed in. The demonic corpses roared and the Yin soldiers howled. In that instant, the winds and clouds changed, and a cloud of dust kicked up. "Who dares to take a step forward?" Xiao Chen said calmly, unhurriedly. Electricity surged in his hand as though he was going to destroy the two departed spirit fruit. "Stop! Don't move!" Wang Can and Qing Cheng both berated them, stopping their subordinates. Departed spirit flowers were hard to find outside. They only existed in the underworld river, an underground forbidden land. Even Emperor Wu did not dare to enter that place. The value of the departed spirit fruit itself was already very high. The value of the fruit was even more immeasurable. Inferior grade martial sage was also the realm that could bring out the best effects of the departed spirit fruit. If they did not have a certain value, the corpse race and ghost race would not have brought out their trump cards and started fighting before reaching the treasury hall. Wei Hua, who had been silent all this while, said, "What do you want? Just say it." Xiao Chen smiled gently and said, "It seems that there are people who understand. Since all of you want this departed spirit fruit, I naturally can't give it to just anyone. You guys can bid for it. Whoever offers the most astral coins will get it. Of course, spirit vein origins, sage-grade secret treasures, secret techniques, and medicinal pills can also be added. In short, I want all treasures. I am a very open-minded person." When the cultivators of the two races heard this, their expressions changed. They wondered if they had heard wrong. This fellow, who was surrounded by more than 100 inferior-grade martial sages and could die at any moment, actually boasted shamelessly and raised the price. Wang Can waved his right hand and smiled coldly. "What qualifications do you have to raise the price? Do you really think we are fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered? At worst, I will just give up on this departed spirit fruit. You don't want it." The corner of Xiao Chen's lips curled up as he tossed out a departed spirit fruit. Then, he flicked his finger, and a strand of purple saber chi shot out. The saber chi shattered the departed spirit fruit with a loud bang. Black death chi immediately surged out, forming boundless, thick clouds that spread out in all directions. The originally formless death chi now turned into thick, dark clouds that spread for a kilometer without showing any signs of dissipating. Kassier. The hearts of the countless corpse race and ghost race cultivators shattered at the same time as they looked at the shattered departed spirit fruit. This was a departed spirit fruit, not a rock. It was worth cities and could not be measured. Yet, Xiao Chen destroyed it without batting an eye. Yu Wangqin gaped, flabbergasted. He stammered for a long time, unable to say anything. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "Brother Wang Can, didn't you say that you don't want it? Why are you so agitated?" "Screw you. I was just saying it. Just saying it, and you really King destroyed it. Yet you still ask me why I am so agitated." Wang Can could not help cursing in his heart. However, he did not dare to say anything more. He feared that if Xiao Chen was upset, he would destroy the only remaining departed spirit fruit as well. A murderous intent flashed in Wei Hua's eyes. He lowered his head and sent a voice projection to a certain person. Then, without changing his expression, he stepped forward and said, "I offer 100,000 black astral coins and 5 rank 3 spirit veins. To you this is a very fair price." At this moment, Xiao Chen already held the upper hand. Qing Cheng was very reluctant, but she had no choice but to accept this reality. She clenched her teeth and said, "I offer 100,000 black astral coins and 10 rank 3 spirit veins as well. 200,000 black astral coins and 15 rank 3 spirit veins." Wei Hua did not hesitate to raise the price again, clearly determined to obtain the departed spirit fruit. When the two arrived earlier, they must have brought the younger generation to search for departed spirit flowers and obtained some spirit veins along the way. Xiao Chen did not say anything. He looked at Qing Cheng, his meaning clear. "If you do not raise the price, this departed spirit fruit will be the other party's." How hateful! Qing Cheng was now gnashing her teeth in hatred, feeling so much regret that her intestines turned green. Originally, she thought that by working with Xiao Chen, with so many of her clansmen and some trump cards, she would definitely be able to suppress Xiao Chen. After the matter was over, she wanted Xiao Chen to spit out everything with interest. Who could have expected such a situation to occur? What kind of person did he invite? Everything was fine, but he actually dug such a big hole for him. However, not raising the price now was out of the question. After putting in so much effort, she had already lost so many people before reaching the treasury hall. If she still could not obtain the departed spirit fruit, she would suffer a great loss. 200,000 black astral coins, 15 rank 3 spirit veins, and a sage-grade essence increasing pill that your human race needs. Both sides were bidding, neither giving way. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and watched the two sides compete. The more vicious the competition, the better. 500,000 black astral coins, 20 rank 3 spirit veins, a sage-grade inner vest, and a sage-grade essence increasing pill. Finally, Wei Hua's heart sank, and he named a price that Qing Cheng could not raise. At such a price, Qing Cheng's expression changed. After hesitating for a long time, she did not continue bidding. Such a price already surpassed the value of the departed spirit fruit. It was not worth it at all. Wei Hua was practically using up half of the resources she had. She did not know what Wei Hua was thinking. When Wei Hua saw that Qing Cheng did not say anything, he smiled and said, "Young Master Xiao, what do you think of this price? Hand over the departed spirit fruit." "Ha ha. Naturally, I, Xiao Chen, am very satisfied with such a price. However, I will have to delay the transaction for a while." The smile on Xiao Chen's face faded. At the end of his words, his expression turned cold. With a flip of his hand, he placed the departed spirit fruit in his universe ring. Then, he instantly turned around. Myriad heaven divine fist, deities descending, tenfold combat prowess. A divine light descended from the sky and entered Xiao Chen's body. His aura soared infinitely, and the resplendent light on his fist was as dazzling as the sun. Bang! When Xiao Chen punched, His fist immediately clashed with Kuei Dou's full power strike. This Kuei Dou took advantage of the moment the two sides raised the price to sneak behind Xiao Chen. When Wei Hua announced the final price, Kuei Dou thought that Xiao Chen would relax, so he immediately launched a sneak attack in the time it took for a spark to fly. However, Kuei Dou did not know that with Xiao Chen's spiritual sense, he could see everything that happened around him in his mind. Not only had Kuei Dou noticed Xiao Chen long ago, but he had also sensed the plot between Xiao Chen and Wei Hua and had been waiting for a long time. A thunderous roar echoed throughout the place, deafening many people for a short period of time. The instant the two fists clashed, Kuei Dou immediately suffered a great loss. For the sake of maintaining the speed of his attack, he could only use 60% of his vital qi. However, Xiao Chen had been storing up power and waiting for a long time. Not only did the myriad Heaven Divine Fist merge his vital qi, mental energy, and heavenly laws, but it also increased his combat prowess tenfold. Kuei Dou vomited a mouthful of blood. Ka-sie, ka-sie. The bones in his right arm shattered. This arm would definitely be crippled for the time being. Kuei Dou's body flew back like an arrow and smashed into the ground, creating a large pit and kicking up a cloud of dust. With the tenfold combat prowess gone, Xiao Chen's boundless aura vanished as well. His white robes fluttered. Aside from a special sharpness, there was nothing special about him. Xiao Chen swung his slightly sore arm without anyone noticing. He felt startled in his heart. A cultivator with a pure physical body was truly horrifying. Even if Kuei Dou only used 60% of his strength, it was already frightening enough. If it were another person standing here, that person would definitely be smashed into a meat patty. However, Kuei Dou ran into Xiao Chen, a well-prepared Xiao Chen. Kuei Dou could only blame himself for being unlucky. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground and ignored the shocked people around him. He put away the puppet snake and somersaulted in the air, leaping out of the encirclement of the two races and landing firmly on the ground. "Come out and trade," Xiao Chen said calmly. Wei Hua looked at Kuei Dou, who fell into a deep pit and stood up in a sorry state. His lips twitched involuntarily as he silently flew out. The two faced each other and placed the items they wanted to trade into a spatial ring before their eyes. Then, they stretched out their hands and pushed. They each controlled their own spatial rings and pushed them towards the other with the speed of an old ox pulling a cart. The cultivators of the two races stood in a row behind them. They did not hide the killing chi in their eyes at all, clearly eager to try. The two spatial rings brushed past each other, and the two sides immediately pulled over the other's spatial rings. "Kill him," Wei Hua said through clenched teeth. He did not even bother looking at the departed spirit fruit in his spatial ring as he retreated at his fastest speed. The ghost race and corpse race cultivators did not need Wei Hua to say anything. They were already filled with rage. The instant Wei Hua retreated, attacks rained down on Xiao Chen. Taiji Yin-Yang Flame Diagram. Xiao Chen, who had been prepared for this long ago, gently pushed off the ground and moved backward. A light flashed in his eyes. The purple thunder true fire and the lunar true flame chased each other, forming a magnificent flame diagram. The 8 trigrams, 4 divisions, and yin-yang condensed into a world of its own, blocking all the attacks. Boom! In just an instant, the Taiji yin-yang flame diagram turned into a golden light and disappeared. However, this short moment was enough for Xiao Chen to do many things. Chapter 838. Roaming Dragons 9 Transformations. Change. Change. Xiao Chen shouted, and his body split into 9. Then, the 9 figures changed again, turning into 81 figures. Under Xiao Chen's control, each figure spun around quickly, kicking up gusts of wind and forming 100-meter-tall tornadoes as they flew forward. Immediately, sand and rocks flew in front. When one looked around, the 81 tornadoes carried countless leaves and dust as they surged forward. The hidden Xiao Chen became even harder to distinguish. After him. Naturally, Wei Hua, Wang Can, Qing Qing, and the others would not let Xiao Chen off so easily. 100 inferior-grade martial sages led countless demonic corpses and Yin soldiers in pursuit. Bang! 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 The tornadoes were shattered by the powerful attacks, and the clones inside were instantly killed by the Yin soldiers and demonic corpses. The ghostly Yin soldiers howled in the wind. Since they did not have physical bodies, they flew the fastest. They kept chasing relentlessly, bobbing up and down in the clouds. The tornadoes shattered one by one. When there were only 8 tornadoes left, Xiao Chen made a prompt decision. He whistled and the strong wind stopped. The 8 figures merged into one in the air. Xiao Chen tilted his body and dove down, widening the distance between him and the group behind him. When Wei Hua and the others saw that Xiao Chen's clones were all destroyed, joy flashed on their faces. Then, they increased their speed again. The group slowly closed the distance. Just as they were about to catch up to Xiao Chen suddenly stretched out his hand. 72 beams of light flashed from the ground. When the beams of light merged, the universe banner appeared in Xiao Chen's hand. Then, he smiled gently, and electric light burst out from under his feet. His speed suddenly doubled. When the black flame sovereign snake, which had been locked up for a long time, discovered that the restriction had disappeared, it immediately soared into the air and spat out black flames. Miserable cries resounded. The cultivators of the 2 races that had chased after Xiao Chen were immediately unlucky, becoming the target of the black flame sovereign snake's rage. Arrows still remained in the black flame sovereign snake's body, causing it to bleed continuously. Furthermore, it had been locked up for such a long time. Its rage and rage were easy to imagine. Black flame sovereign snake. Quickly retreat! Quickly retreat! Wang Can shouted, trying to gather the corpse race group together and retreat. However, the situation was chaotic. The black flame sovereign snake charged forward ferociously. As it opened its mouth, it shot out flames, completely disrupting the ferocious group. Fortunately, this was the Sage Mark Monument's inner world. If one died, one would only be sent out. Otherwise, one would suffer great losses. When Qing Qing saw that white figure leaving calmly in the distance, her eyes turned cold. She stretched out her hand and beckoned. 8 spirits carrying a white palanquin appeared. Qing Qing pushed off the ground and flew into the palanquin. Ji Chen and Spirit by Chen, Spirit, Shizhan, Corpse Ji Ghost Spirits by and Star Race Ji Qing Qing instructed. The 8 ghosts lifted the white palanquin and quickly moved forward. Ji Shizhan and Bai Su sighed speechlessly. Ever since Qing Qing made her debut, she had never failed like this. She had been schemed against so many times. First, along the way, the various spirit veins' origins were plundered. Then, Xiao Chen used them to fight the corpse race. Finally, the situation was even worse. When Xiao Chen retreated, he directly released the black flame sovereign snake. The group immediately lost more than half its members. When they went to the treasury hall, they would not be able to compete. More importantly, after putting in so much effort and bringing along 2 soul reapers, they still could not obtain the departed spirit fruit that they thought they would obtain. Everything had failed. Given her pride, she would definitely not be able to accept this. After Xiao Chen put away the universe banner and released the black flame sovereign snake, he left in a much more relaxed manner. A berserk black flame sovereign snake was not easy to deal with. It would already be pretty good if the 2 races could clean up the mess. Even if they could spare some effort to chase after Xiao Chen, there would not be too many people. If there were only a few people, there would be no need to fear him. Xiao Chen's harvest this time could be said to be very fruitful. Right now, he had 7 million astral coins and 600,000 black astral coins. In total, he had 13 million astral coins. With such wealth, he was no weaker than any noble clan scion or sect inheritor. Wei Hua's sage-grade inner vest was not much. However, it was better than nothing. It was an additional layer of defense. As for the lunar cassia tree and dragon mark fruits in the immortal spirit ring, with so many spirit veins helping them mature, Ao Jiao smiled happily and busied herself. After Xiao Chen left the Sage Mark Monument, he would see the lunar cassia tree blooming. The 5 dragon mark fruits would also be more than 800 years old. After expending so many spirit veins' origins, it was all worth it. Suddenly, Xiao Chen's footsteps stopped. He looked up and saw a dim light suddenly hovering in front of him. When the light stopped, Xiao Chen squinted and looked carefully. 8 wandering spirits carrying a white palanquin floated quietly in front of him. Young Master Xiao, good move. Qing Qing really underestimated you. As the ancients said, suffering a loss is a blessing. Qing Qing will remember today's loss for life. Qing Qing's cold voice came from the palanquin. There was not much sorrow or joy in it. It seemed extremely calm. Xiao Chen carefully sized up this white palanquin. He had long felt that this palanquin was extraordinary. Now it looked like it had some extraordinary speed at the very least. However, he did not know if it had any other functions. When Xiao Chen heard Qing Cheng's words, he did not react. His expression remained calm as he said, "Miss Qing Cheng is too serious. Actually, between you and me, if we ignore the death throne, there is no unresolvable conflict between us. No wonder you are so careful. It turns out that you knew long ago that the secret of your throne was exposed. Even though I cannot obtain the departed spirit fruit, I have to obtain the death throne today." Qing Qing formed hand seals in the palanquin, and 2 cold winds blew. The 10-meter-tall black and white soul reapers arrived before Xiao Chen in a flash, holding cold, black scythes. Black and white soul reapers, according to the legends of the immortal epic, are one of the 10 great Yin masters of the underworld. They have many incarnations. Before an ordinary person dies, they will draw their soul into the underworld river to undergo the 6 paths of reincarnation. Naturally, the black and white soul reapers that my ghost race refined cannot compare to the legendary soul reapers. However, they are still as strong as medial-grade martial sages. I advise you not to resist or think of fleeing. Your speed cannot compare to the 8 ghost palanquin. Qing Qing, who was in the palanquin, enunciated every word extremely coldly. Xiao Chen sized up the black and white soul reapers and smiled faintly. What strange confidence! Have you not thought about why I dared to leave with you even though I knew you had trump cards? Even if that black flame sovereign snake had not appeared, you would not have been able to obtain the departed spirit fruit and the death throne. This is because I will never take the initiative to enter a dangerous situation if I am not confident. Xiao Chen opened his hand, and an ancient lamp appeared in his palm. Then, he bit the tip of his tongue and sent a mouthful of essence blood containing a large amount of mental energy into the wick of the lamp. The flickering flame lit up, and the ancient lamp drifted gently into the air. Rings of light appeared behind the ancient lamp. The mysterious inscriptions on the ancient lamp gave off a jade-green light. An illusory figure became increasingly clear in the light. The immortal Tao honors life, boundlessly rescuing people. Once I recite the scriptures, all the great sages praise me. Twice I recite the scriptures, and withered bones come to life. Immortal Qi shrouded the illusory figure as it recited the mysterious scriptures. The scriptures contained the ghost Tao of reincarnation, the power to deliver all living things from suffering. Clumps of light quickly drifted away from the black and white soul reapers' bodies. The light on their bodies slowly weakened. Person cleansing scripture! Qing Qing exclaimed in a fluster from the palanquin. Then, she quickly formed hand seals and called back the black and white soul reapers. In just a short while, the black and white soul reapers had lost 50 to 60% of their strength. With a swoosh, the white palanquin directly fell from the sky. The palanquin overturned and tilted. The 8 strands of wandering souls that were carrying the palanquin were directly expiated by the expiation scripture. Xiao Chen revealed a smile on his face and calmly put away the ancient lamp. Then, He took a big step forward, stepping on electric light and disappearing from this place. Qing Qing leaped out of the palanquin with an extremely unsightly expression. With a flick of her hand, she released the 8 wandering souls and lifted the white palanquin again. Qing Qing looked in the direction that Xiao Chen had taken. After a long time, she did not give chase in the end. This time, her defeat was simply too embarrassing. She had already lost miserably in the first place. In the end, she had even foolishly charged forward and allowed herself to be trampled on. Xiao Chen had obtained the ancient lamp from where the evil king died. It was a king-grade secret treasure. Clearly, a half-sage would not be able to refine it completely. After Xiao Chen advanced to martial sage, he took some time to refine it on his way to the Kunlun mountain range. Although he could not bring out the full might of this secret treasure with his current cultivation, after using it for a while, Xiao Chen gained a rough understanding of the effects of this lamp. However, he could not help but feel somewhat disappointed. This lamp was called the reincarnation lamp. It was made from the fragments of a magic treasure from the Immortal epoch. After mending the formations and adding in new materials, it was refined into a secret treasure suitable for cultivators. In reality, most secret treasures above sage grade were made from the fragments of magic treasures from the Immortal epoch. First senior sister Shui Lingling's purple bow and Ying Qiong's heavenly downpour umbrella were like this. The reincarnation lamp continued the main function of the original magic treasure, summoning the souls of immortals to chant the Taoist cleansing scripture to purify the evil energy of remnant souls. A perfectly good king-grade secret treasure became useless just like that. Aside from having some restraining effect on the ghost race, it was not very useful to cultivators of the other races. It was somewhat unfortunate that this was a king-grade secret treasure. Any king-grade secret treasure in the Kunlun realm would fetch a sky-high price in an auction. Only emperor-grade secret treasures were stronger than king-grade secret treasures. However, emperor-grade secret treasures were normally used by the various sovereign sects and clans to protect their headquarters. They would not take them out easily. Without Emperor Wu's cultivation, one would not be able to bring out the might of an emperor-grade secret treasure. For people of Xiao Chen's cultivation, king-grade secret treasures were the most suitable secret treasures. However, perhaps after refining it completely, the reincarnation lamp might have some other uses. After all, it was left behind by the evil king. Xiao Chen raised his head and looked at the distant pillar of light reaching into the sky. Anticipation flashed in his eyes. He wondered what kind of surprise the treasury hall would have. There were still 5 more days before Xiao Chen would be sent out of the Sage Mark Monument. He had to rush over.